Chapter 520. Yihao, what's going on? Guo Jinyu asked nervously when he saw the four patriarchs standing behind Yihao. It's nothing. I've reached an agreement with all of you. You don't have to be nervous. Yihao smiled perfunctorily. After all, there were too many people here. He couldn't possibly say that he had subdued all the patriarchs, right? That's good. Guo Jinyu heaved a sigh of relief and couldn't help but look at the four patriarchs. He didn't understand how Yihao had subdued the four patriarchs. The respect they had for Yihao couldn't be faked. But since Yihao didn't say anything, he couldn't ask directly. Everyone, I'd like to use your sect's sacred cauldron hall. Is that okay? Yihao asked the elders with a smile. Everyone shook their heads. None of them dared to object. Everything else aside, just the fact that Yihao could refine a sacred pill meant that Yihao was worthy of entering the sacred cauldron hall. Young Master Yi, you can use the sacred cauldron hall as you wish. No one will object, the first supreme elder said. That's right. As long as young Master Yi doesn't mind, you can use the sacred cauldron hall as you wish. I'll kill anyone who objects. The crowd had completely turned into Yihao's fans and were fighting to be the first to speak. Huang Yu, on the other hand, had an awkward expression on his face. In fact, he also wanted to compliment Yihao. After all, he was a young saint-grade alchemist. Not to mention Yihao, his future was limitless. He also wanted to curry favor with him, but when he thought about what he had done previously, he didn't have the nerve to do so. Then I won't stand on ceremony, Yihao said and entered the sacred cauldron hall. Yihao skillfully threw the pills into the cauldron. At the same time, he turned on the fire source and started refining. Yihao's movements were simple and crude. No matter what kind of herb it was, he threw it all into the cauldron in one go. The Gedanzan disciples, including the elders, were all dumbfounded. Oh my God, the holy elixir is actually refined like this. In Gedanzan, more and more people had gathered in front of the sacred furnace hall. He wanted to see how the saint pill was refined. But Yihao's method of refining pills made them doubt their lives. They were all doubting whether they had learned the arrangement of medicinal herbs, the time of placing them, and the control of the fire for nothing. Because Yihao did not use it at all. Success. In the blink of an eye, Yihao had already produced a pot of medicinal pills. 2 pitch-black medicinal pills were held in Yihao's hand. Yihao immediately placed them into a jade bottle that he had prepared beforehand. That's it. When everyone saw this scene, they all secretly clicked their tongues. Everyone else aside, even the first supreme elder felt as if his eyeballs were about to fall out of their sockets. One had to know that as an emperor-level alchemist, he would need several days to prepare before refining an emperor-level medicinal pill. Moreover, the refining process would take a very long time, and he had to be very careful. Because if he was not careful and made a mistake in any of the steps, the entire pot of medicinal pills would be wasted. And even if the refinement was completed, the quality would be ignored. In terms of time, he was only a long way behind Yihao. Moreover, he was refining a holy elixir. While everyone was talking, Yihao actually started refining the second pot of medicinal pills. Is it that easy to refine a holy elixir? Doesn't he need to rest? Everyone thought that Yihao would definitely rest for a while after refining a pot of medicinal pills to replenish his energy. But Yihao did not seem to have any intention of resting at all. Are you sure he's refining a holy elixir? Isn't he playing around? Many of the disciples and elders who had arrived late asked in surprise. Big brother, this is how the holy elixir is refined? The second great ancestor looked at the first great ancestor in shock. One had to know that the first great ancestor had done a lot of research in alchemy. However, they'd only heard about how difficult it was to refine pills. But seeing Yihao refining pills as if they were drinking water, it did not seem difficult at all. The first great ancestor looked at it for a long time and swallowed his saliva. Crazy. The first great ancestor knew that refining pills was definitely not that easy. Otherwise, his alchemy would not be half-baked. If they had not seen Yihao's 2 holy elixir pills with their own eyes, they would not have believed it. They definitely would not have believed that holy elixir pills were refined this way. This had completely subverted all the concepts of alchemy. Many people had already started taking out their pill furnaces and learning from Yi Hao's method to refine medicinal pills. Because seeing such a simple and crude method of refining pills, it was likely that anyone would be itching to give it a try. If he could really be like Yi Hao and refine pills so easily, then the efficiency of refining pills would definitely increase by several times. Bang! Suddenly, there was a loud explosion. Everyone turned around and saw a disciple's furnace exploding perfectly. What a scam! The disciple looked embarrassed. He did not expect to become the focus of everyone's attention. He cried out helplessly. He felt a slight heartache in his heart. After all, he had wasted a bunch of spiritual herbs. Who would have thought that the furnace would explode as soon as the spiritual herbs were placed in it? I didn't do anything wrong. The disciple carefully compared his actions with Yi Hao's and wondered if his actions were not simple and crude enough. Bang! 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 But before he could finish his thought, the sound of furnace exploding continuously rang out. The disciple felt slightly relieved and embarrassed. What's the difference? The many grand elders and Guo Jinyu were also analyzing at this time. This was because they had also observed carefully. Yi Hao's refining method was similar to that of the other disciples. Why was Yi Hao able to refine holy elixir pills, while the other disciples could not even refine ordinary pills, and their furnaces exploded instantly? Could it be related to the sacred cauldron hall? Some of the elders guessed. The grand elders pondered for a moment and then shook their heads. Guo Jinyu said, although the sacred cauldron hall has a holy cauldron and a sacred fire, it only has an additional effect on pills. Moreover, it is impossible to refine holy elixir just by throwing a bunch of spiritual herbs. The grand elder also nodded and said, Sect Master is right. I have used the sacred cauldron hall a few times. It is definitely impossible for it to be so effective. Huh? Yi Hao heard the explosion outside and immediately looked outside. They're all copying me. Seeing the furnace exploding outside, Yi Hao immediately understood what was going on. Then Yi Hao smiled and shook his head. He thought to himself, how can you copy me? These people did not have the help of the system. How could they refine pills as easily as me? However, these people's actions gave Yi Hao a hint. The way he refined medicinal pills was simply too shocking to hear. Thinking of this, Yi Hao immediately put on an act and casually made some gestures. Chapter 5:21. In the eyes of an alchemist, alchemy was no different from a martial artist's martial arts. Therefore, when they saw Yi Hao's method, they thought that Yi Hao was using alchemy. All of them focused and wanted to memorize all of Yi Hao's actions. This pill incantation is so profound. It looks messy and disorderly. Our cultivation is still too shallow. Everyone looked at Yi Hao's messy alchemy and said in distress, all right, you've seen enough. Yi Hao felt a little embarrassed as he watched the crowd imitate his method of making things up. After Yi Hao finished speaking, he closed the door of the sacred cauldron hall. Don't. I haven't understood it yet. Seeing Yi Hao close the door, everyone started to clamor. Young Master Ye's alchemy method is definitely a top alchemist. It's good enough that he can show us so much. Someone suddenly said. Everyone felt that it made sense. After all, they were already very lucky to be able to see a sage-level alchemist refining pills. How could they ask for too much? Did any of you see young Master Ye's alchemy method? I'll give you a batch of spiritual herbs to learn. Me too. I can give you a batch of finished pills. Whoever can teach me, I'll be his underling. Then there was a wave of learning alchemy methods in Gdanzan. There are even some elders who set up a research group to study Yi Hao's alchemy methods. But the outcome was obvious. Where did His Majesty go? There are less than 10 days before the grand ceremony. What should we do? At this moment in the Fire Dragon Empire, the Fire Emperor said anxiously, one must know that Emperor Hashan had found a large group of allies and had been building momentum. They kept slandering Yanlong's camp, saying that the Fire Dragon Empire was as timid as a mouse and did not dare to accept the challenge. And they had been provoking Yanlong's camp. Now, in the entire 10,000 countries continent, many forces were looking at Yanlong's camp, hoping that Yin Long's camp would give a reply. However, almost 2 months had passed, and there was still no reply from Yin Long's camp. On the other hand, Emperor Hashan was even more arrogant and condescending. This caused the Fire Emperor and the others to seethe with anger. They wanted nothing more than to give Emperor Hashan a tight slap across his face. This told everyone that Yin Long's camp was definitely not easy to deal with. But Yi Hao did not appear. Moreover, the Emperor Hashan's dynasty was very convenient. Now that he had the help of 3 imperial empires, and it was said that the Saint dynasty was helping as well, it gave them a lot of pressure. Therefore, at this moment, Yin Long's camp seemed to be at the heart of the storm. At this moment, everyone in Yin Long's camp was looking forward to Yi Hao's appearance so that he could regain his dignity. This was because the past few months had been too suffocating for them. Emperor Hashan, it seems like he will definitely get first place in the imperial dynasty rankings this time. That's right. Even the biggest dark horse, Yin Long's camp, doesn't dare to say anything. Who else would be a match for Emperor Hashan? Who else would dare to go against Emperor Hashan? At least Yin Long's camp is tactful. Otherwise, Emperor Hashan would definitely beat them until they pissed their pants. At this moment, many emperors in the Hishan's camp had already gathered. They were all speaking respectfully to Emperor Hashan. I didn't expect Yin Long's camp to be so useless. Emperor Hashan laughed arrogantly. Who knew that they wouldn't even dare to participate in the competition? In the eyes of Emperor Hashan, the past 2 months were the best 2 months that he had ever lived. This was because in these 2 months, there were all sorts of people speaking respectfully to him every day. Each and every one of them obviously treated him as their backer. Moreover, he had become completely famous in these 2 months. Which country in the imperial dynasty would dare to provoke him now? Moreover, if one were to ask which country was the most famous in these 2 months, the answer would be Emperor Hashan's dynasty. Emperor Hashan's dynasty's reputation in these 2 months would definitely surpass that of many imperial dynasties and even sacred dynasties. Emperor Hashan couldn't wait for the second round of the competition to start quickly. This was because that way, he would be able to be in the limelight again. He was determined to crush the emperor's dynasty and become an emperor-level force in one fell swoop. He couldn't wait for Yin Long's camp to participate in the competition as soon as possible. This was because, in his opinion, stepping on Yin Long's camp to rise to the top was the most satisfying feeling. However, from the looks of it, Yin Long's camp didn't dare to agree. In his opinion, Yin Long's camp was probably going to surrender. Emperor Hashan, when you become an imperial dynasty, don't forget about us. That's right, Emperor Hashan, since you're eating the meat, you should at least let us have a taste of the soup. No matter what, I'm definitely going to follow Emperor Hashan. In order to curry favor with Emperor Hashan, the emperors of many empires started to fawn over him. Don't worry, as long as I eat, I'll make sure you all drink. Emperor Hashan squinted his eyes and said with a smile, I hope that Yin Long's camp will agree to participate in the competition. Otherwise, it won't be fun. Emperor Hashan smiled proudly. Ha ha, Emperor Hashan is so mighty. Phew, I'm finally done refining. Yi Hao continued to refine the elixirs. When he finally finished refining the last pot of elixirs, Yi Hao exhaled a mouthful of turbid air and said, 20,000. Yi Hao counted the peak martial sage elixirs and was secretly shocked. He had thought that refining 10,000 peak martial sage elixirs was already very good. However, he did not expect the refining to be so smooth this time. Moreover, he had doubled the number of elixirs through the elixir explosion technique. Moreover, these 20,000 peak martial sage elixirs were absolutely extraordinary. This was because they could create an army of 20,000 peak martial sage experts in an instant, who in a myriad kingdom continent could produce 20,000 peak martial sage experts. With these 20,000 peak martial sage elixirs, Yi Hao was full of confidence in the myriad kingdom grand ceremony. Not to mention other countries, Yi Hao was confident that he could defeat all the countries below the imperial dynasty. Although I don't have many martial gods, I can use martial sages. If one martial sage is not enough to defeat a martial god, What about 10 or 100? Putting everything else aside, just the ancient mutated beasts were at the peak of martial saint realm. A single ancient mutated beast was capable of fighting against a low-level martial god. If two ancient mutated beasts joined forces, an early-level martial god expert would be defeated without a doubt. Of course, in a martial god realm, a small realm was the difference between heaven and earth. Compared to other small realms, the difference was much greater. Similarly, the martial god realm was divided into 10 levels. Although Yihao had not tested it before, if he had 20,000 peak martial sage experts in his hands, Yihao would not be afraid, even if they were peak martial gods. However, although the elixirs were completed, there was still one last step to complete the refining. That was the sacred elixir tribulation. Previously, there were only 2 sacred elixirs, which did not cause much of a stir. Chapter 5:22. Yihao had originally wanted to let these peak martial sage elixirs undergo the tribulation in Gdanzin. But Yihao immediately gave up on this plan when he saw the people betting on the sacred cauldron hall. Yihao, how's the refining of the elixirs? Guo Jinyu had not seen Yihao for a long time and immediately asked. It's all right. Yihao nodded and asked at the same time, Uncle Guo, do you have a remote place where I need to let these elixirs undergo the tribulation? Let me think about it. Guo Jinyu immediately closed his eyes and pondered. Then he opened his eyes and said, Yes, come with me. Then I'll have to trouble Uncle Guo. Yihao was overjoyed and said gratefully. Guo Jinyu smiled and immediately flew out. Yihao immediately followed, and at the same time, the 4 patriarchs also followed. Looking at Yihao's back, the first Supreme Elder could guess what Yihao was going to do and resisted the urge to chase after him. After flying for half an hour with Guo Jinyu, they arrived at a deserted desert. Looking around, there was no one in the desert. Most importantly, martial arts were sparse. Even demonic beasts could not be bothered to appear, let alone humans. Yihao and Guo Jinyu flew for a while before finally coming to a stop. There shouldn't be anyone here. Those divine elixirs that are suitable for you will undergo the tribulation, Guo Jinyu said and looked at Yihao expectantly. He was curious to know how many elixirs Yihao had refined over the past few days. According to Yihao's previous speed, he estimated that he had refined over 100 elixirs, or at least dozens of elixirs. Actually, Guo Jinyu calculated based on Yihao's refining of 1 elixir at a time. He did not know that in order to save time, Yihao directly threw more than 10 elixirs at a time into the elixir furnace. Yihao looked around and felt that this place was not bad, so he instructed the 4 patriarchs, be careful. If anyone comes, kill them. With so many holy elixir pills undergoing tribulation, it was definitely not a small matter, so Yihao did not dare to be too careless. Don't worry, my lord, the great ancestor immediately said. At the same time, he took out his weapon and looked around vigilantly. Lord? Guo Jinyu was stunned when he heard the great ancestor's words. He looked at Yihao in shock. Guo Jinyu was very clear about the great old ancestor's identity. But now, he was actually addressing Yihao as Lord. What was going on? For a moment, Guo Jinyu couldn't accept it. Guo Jinyu was very curious. How did Yihao do it? But before he could think about it, something even more attractive appeared. Yihao took out a black-colored pill and crushed it. A bright light burst out and was tossed into the air by Yihao. 1713. Oh my God, there are actually 13 of them. Although he was confident in his heart, seeing 13 divine elixir pills at once still shocked him. But before he could react, Yihao took out another black-colored pill and repeated the action of crushing it before tossing it into the air. 27. Guo Jinyu counted carefully. He wanted to see how many pills Yihao had refined over the past few days. Rumble. At this moment, dark clouds started to gather in the sky, and thunder started to rumble. Although the sky was dark due to the pressure, it couldn't cover up the dazzling light emitted by those holy elixir pills. 40, 52, 66, 98. There are more. Yihao took out a few more pills. At this moment, Guo Jinyu felt his blood boiling. Even though he was the sect leader of Gdanzin, He had never seen so many pills. Guo Jinyu stared at Yi Hao carefully. He wanted to see how many more pills Yi Hao had. This was because, in his opinion, Yi Hao should be able to refine more than 100 pills. At this moment, Guo Jinyu wasn't the only one who was shocked. The four old ancestors were as well. As martial gods, the four old ancestors had seen many things and they didn't think it was a good idea. But when they saw the tribulation of 100 pills, they were completely shocked. Just like Guo Jinyu, they were shocked and looked forward to Yi Hao taking out more pills. This is already 150. Why are there still more? After counting for a while, Guo Jinyu saw that Guo Jinyu was still taking out pills. This seemed to be a little different from what he had expected. 200, 500, 1,000. Oh my God, am I dreaming? Guo Jinyu was so shocked that he couldn't close his mouth. The four old ancestors were also in a daze as they looked at the holy elixir pills in the air. There are more. How many pills are there? Oh my God, this is too exciting. Guo Jinyu looked at Yi Hao, who was still taking out pills. There were no words that could describe his emotions at this moment. Don't just stand there. Help me crush them. Although crushing 1,000 pills seemed like a lot, it happened in the blink of an eye. However, Yi Hao was a little annoyed, so he took out the remaining 19,000 pills. Ugh, crazy! Looking at the black pills piled up like a small mountain in front of them, Guo Jinyu and the four old ancestors swallowed their saliva. As martial sages and martial gods, they actually felt that it was difficult to breathe at this moment. Looking at the huge number of holy elixir pills in front of them, they were so shocked that they couldn't breathe. Brother, stop fooling around. These are holy elixir pills. How could you just throw them on the ground? Seeing Yi Hao put the pile of holy elixir pills on the ground, Guo Jinyu and the four old ancestors felt their hearts ache. Are these really holy elixir pills? Guo Jinyu stuttered, unable to keep his composure. However, even without Yi Hao's reminder, he knew that these were really holy elixir pills. However, in his impression, holy elixir pills were very valuable. His dream was to be able to refine holy elixir pills. However, seeing a small mountain of holy elixir pills in front of him was a huge blow to him. Compared to Yi Hao, he felt that, as the sect master of Gedanzan, he had nothing left to live for. Guo Jinyu trembled as he picked up a holy elixir pill and crushed it carefully, as if he was afraid of damaging it. Guo Jinyu felt extremely excited and happy when he saw the holy elixir pill emit a golden light. This was an alchemist's infatuation with pills. It was like an antique enthusiast who had obtained a priceless antique. This kind of feeling was indescribable. Seeing Guo Jinyu in a daze while holding the pills, Yi Hao couldn't help but urge him, Uncle Guo, hurry up and crush them. There's still a lot of them here. It won't be good if they attract powerhouses. Yes, yes, yes. Hearing Yi Hao's words, Guo Jinyu said awkwardly, I was a little too excited. Chapter 5:23. Crack, crack, crack. Listening to the cracking sound of the elixir in his hand, Guo Jinyu felt extremely comfortable for a moment. Looking at the divine elixir in his hand, it shed its black shell and emitted a golden light. Guo Jinyu immediately threw the elixir into the air. Guo Jinyu's mood, along with the initial nervousness, gradually became numb. This was because there were simply too many divine elixir that had passed through his hands. In an instant, there were already thousands of them. At this moment, the dark clouds in the sky were getting thicker and thicker, and the thunder and lightning were rolling more and more violently. After all, the degree of tribulation of one divine elixir was definitely different from the degree of tribulation of two divine elixir. What's more, this was 20,000 divine elixir. The scale of the tribulation was getting bigger and bigger, and at this time, it had attracted the attention of many people. What's that? It looks like tribulation clouds, but why are they still gathering? It's so strange. It's been so long, but the tribulation hasn't started yet. What the hell is going through tribulation? Let's go and take a look. At this moment, many experts were gathering in the direction of Yi Hao. After all, for a tribulation like this, the probability of a treasure being born was higher. For all the warriors, this was definitely a great opportunity. And as a warrior, for the sake of treasures, they would definitely risk their lives. After all, a treasure could change the fate of a person, a family, or a force. Such things happened too many times in the Myriad Kingdom continent, simply too many to count. Therefore, those who could sense the tribulation clouds immediately flew in the direction of Yihao. Looking at the dense and dazzling divine elixir in the sky, Yihao exhaled a mouthful of turbid air. Phew, it's finally done. At this time, Guojinyu and the fourth old ancestor looked at the sky, completely stunned. 20,000. Guojinyu counted carefully and found that there were 20,000 divine elixir. He really couldn't accept that these elixir were completed in such a short time by Yihao. Was he still human? Even a god-level alchemist couldn't do this. Guojinyu was an alchemist, but the shock in his heart could be imagined. He had the urge to become Yihao's disciple. This was because the alchemy that he was so proud of was nothing in front of Yihao's alchemy. And most importantly, how old was Yihao? Yihao could no longer be described as an alchemy genius. Guojinyu could only use the word monster to describe Yihao. 20,000 divine elixir pills was something that had never happened before in the Myriad Kingdom continent. After all, who could create so many sane elixirs at once? Did they really think that sane elixirs were cabbages? If someone else had told him that 20,000 sane elixir pills were going through the tribulation together, he probably wouldn't have believed it even if he was beaten to death. However, this scene was truly happening right before their eyes. What kind of master are we following? The four patriarchs were speechless. Thinking back, it was easy to blackmail Yihao for Mu Shengzhen. Now that he thought about it, it was such a joke. With Yihao's alchemy skills, even god-tier factions would fight over him. The Thunder Tribulation has begun. The Thunder Tribulation had been accumulating for a long time and covered a wide area. At this time, Yihao was a little nervous. After all, this was 20,000 sane elixir pills. Who knew what would happen? Be alert, Yihao immediately said. This was the time when many people were the most restless. It was the easiest time for something to go wrong. With 20,000 sane elixir pills, there would definitely be many people who couldn't resist the temptation and made a move. At this moment, there were indeed many people who were watching this scene in the dark. But each and every one of them, in addition to being dumbfounded, was shocked. What's going on? Can sane elixir pills be mass-produced? Each and every one of them thought in shock. After all, they might have seen one sane elixir pills going through the tribulation. They might have seen two sane elixir pills going through the tribulation. At most, they might have seen 3 sane elixir pills going through the tribulation. But who had ever seen 20,000 sane elixir pills going through the tribulation? The degree of shock of that scene could only be imagined. In the sky, tens of thousands of square meters were neatly arranged with sane elixir pills. The sane elixir pills emitted a dazzling light, tempting everyone. After all, this was a sane elixir pill. In the Grand Continent, it was considered a top elixir. One could imagine how precious a sane elixir pill was. Many martial saints couldn't afford it. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Suddenly, there were several sounds of breaking through the air. It turned out that there were people who couldn't wait for the Thunder Tribulation to finish and wanted to snatch the sane elixir pills. Seeing this scene, Yihao's eyes turned cold. He said in a cold voice, "Kill them." As soon as Yihao's voice fell, the 4 great ancestors attacked together and killed everyone in an instant. Those who were hiding in the dark were shocked. They didn't expect that there were so many martial gods guarding here. But none of them were willing to leave. Yihao frowned. He was ready to summon all the ancient beasts at any time, because he knew that those who couldn't help but make the first move were just some clowns who couldn't stand on the stage. They couldn't even be considered as cannon fodder. At least cannon fodder had brains. The real enemies were those who were hiding in the dark and hadn't made a move yet. Master, I can sense the chi and energy of more than one martial god here. Chief Patriarch suddenly said with a serious face. Master, it's the same on my side. Second Patriarch said with a pale face. Same on my side. Same on my side. Fourth great ancestor and fifth great ancestor said at once. Yihao's heart sank. He didn't expect that there would be so many martial gods here. There were already so many martial gods, not to mention martial sages. In an instant, he lost his advantage in terms of numbers. Yi Hao was thinking carefully about how to deal with this. He believed that for so many Saint Elixir pills, those people would risk their lives to fight for it. But they couldn't just take his things as they wished. Those who wanted to take his things must pay the price. But he didn't expect that 20,000 Saint Elixir pills would cause such a huge commotion. Even in such a remote place, it had attracted so many spies. Boom, boom, boom. As Yi Hao pondered, 20,000 lightning bolts shot out from the tribulation cloud and bombarded the Saint Elixir pills. The purple lightning bolts collided with the shiny Saint Elixir pills and instantly became extremely dazzling. This scene was even more shocking. Cool. That was the only word that could describe the scene in front of everyone's eyes. Go. Many people thought that the tribulation cloud was over. Someone suddenly shouted and rushed toward the Saint Elixir pills, afraid that he would be a step too late. Boom, boom, boom. Before the four great ancestors could make a move, the tribulation cloud shot out several lightning bolts and bombarded the people who were reaching for the Saint Elixir pills. The people who were bombarded didn't have time to react and were instantly turned into ashes. Chapter 5:24. The rest of the people hiding in the dark were terrified when they saw what had happened to those who had acted rashly. They were glad that they had acted a little later. Otherwise, the ones who would have been reduced to ashes by now would probably be them. Rumble. The second lightning tribulation followed closely behind and struck down once again. The lightning tribulation was much thicker than the previous one, and it struck the holy pills once again. Do it. Seeing that the second lightning tribulation was about to disappear, Yi Hao knew that the tribulation was about to end. Because of the two divine elixir pills before, Yi Hao knew how many lightning tribulations there were. However, the people hiding in the dark didn't know if the tribulation was over. None of them dared to make a move. Yi Hao and the four great ancestors instantly flew out and collected all the divine elixir pills in an instant. After all, the martial gods were powerful. It wouldn't take much for them to collect 20,000 holy pills. The people hiding in the dark were enraged. They didn't expect that Yi Hao would take away all the holy pills just because they had hesitated for a few seconds. Many of them regretted not making a move earlier. If they had made a move earlier, they could have at least gotten a few holy pills. Master, we'll hold them back. You should leave now. The great ancestor said anxiously as he handed all the holy pills to Yi Hao. Can you leave now? Yi Hao smiled bitterly. After all, everyone saw that he had the holy pills. The first person they would kill would be him. Moreover, Yi Hao didn't intend to leave so easily. These people had dared to covet his holy pills. They would have to pay a painful price to make up for it. Hand over the holy pills, and you can leave. Suddenly, a person flew out from the dark and exuded the aura of a third-order martial god. The person stared greedily at Yi Hao and said, "Everyone, let's work together and share the holy pills equally." The martial god said loudly, "Brother, you're right. I agree. All right, I agree to do that too. Kid, if you know what's good for you, hand over the holy pills and we'll spare your life." As soon as the first martial god finished speaking, 6 or 7 martial gods walked out from the shadows. Brat, how about it? You only want 4 martial gods. We have 8 people here. It's still not too late to hand over the medicinal pills. Murong Si said as he looked at Yi Hao provocatively. Oh, Yi Hao chuckled when he heard Murong Si's words. If you think so, then there's no problem. Murong Si chuckled as well, looking as if he had Yi Hao in his grasp. Whoever kills him, I'll give him half of my holy elixir. Yi Hao looked at the arrogant Murong Si and suddenly said. Murong Si was shocked when he heard Yi Hao's words. However, when he saw that no one was moving, he heaved a sigh of relief. Haha, brat, no one will fall for your trick. Murong Si smiled proudly. You should just give up on this idea. And Murong Si suddenly felt a pain in his neck. He turned around with difficulty and saw a martial god standing behind him with a dagger in his hand. Murong Si couldn't believe that someone would actually make a move. Sorry, you're not worth half of the holy elixir. Zhang Chaijin said as he wiped his dagger. At this time, Murong-Si felt that he had become the biggest joke. He didn't expect to die just like that. He was extremely unwilling, but there was nothing he could do. Little devouring beast, go. Yi Hao immediately ordered the little devouring beast. The little devouring beast was naturally the one he had subdued in the ancient ruins. It was the first one to follow him. After devouring the blood demon ancestor's body, it was only a martial saint. As for Murong-Si's third order martial god body, he had to make good use of it. It would be a pity if he wasted it. Thank you, Lord. The devouring beast immediately pounced on Murong-Si's corpse and swallowed it whole. Murong-Si's corpse disappeared on the spot. Everyone blinked their eyes, not understanding what the devouring beast was. Before they could figure it out, the devouring beast had already transformed into Murong-Si's appearance. Another martial god. Yi Hao was overjoyed. It was a pity that he didn't know what happened to the heavenly Yin spirit. He had wasted Murong-Si's soul. Otherwise, he could have added another force to his force. What's going on? Everyone couldn't understand how Murong-Si could come back from the dead. They had seen Murong-Si being killed with their own eyes. They carefully observed Murong-Si's aura and found that it was no different from the previous Murong-Si. What kind of demonic technique did you use? The martial gods looked at Yi Hao nervously. After all, this was simply too shocking. How powerful was it to be able to bring someone back from the dead? Didn't that mean that as long as one of them died, he would come back from the dead and become one of Yi Hao's men? Everyone guessed nervously. Where's my elixir? Zhang Chaijin looked at Yi Hao warily and asked. The elixir is in my hands. If you want it, come and get it yourself. Brat, you didn't keep your promise. Hearing Yi Hao's words, how could Zhang Chaijin not know that he had been fooled by Yi Hao? He immediately roared in anger. Kill them, Yi Hao ordered in a low voice. The four ancestors and Murong-Si's devouring beast immediately found their opponents and pounced. We still have the advantage in numbers. Zhang Chaijin snorted. Although his side had lost one person, there were still 7 martial gods. On Yi Hao's side, although there was an additional martial god, there were only 5 of them. Overall, his side still had the upper hand. Following Zhang Chaijin's order, the remaining 6 martial gods drew their weapons and charged forward. Brat, hand over the elixir obediently. Zhang Chaijin said arrogantly. 7 martial gods against 5 martial gods instantly gained the upper hand. You guys hold them back, I'll go and snatch the holy elixir. Zhang Chaijin's words barely left his mouth before he charged towards Yi Hao. Brat, I gave you a chance, but you didn't eat it. Now, you're regretting it. Zhang Chaijin attacked Yi Hao, revealing his third order martial god cultivation. Zhang Chaijin had no doubt that his attack would turn Yi Hao into minced meat. Moreover, Yi Hao was merely a 7th order martial emperor. Without the protection of a martial god, he was like an ant in his eyes. What? You got me. He wanted to see Yi Hao panic, but he didn't see it. Yi Hao still had a smile on his face as he looked at Zhang Chaijin. Zhang Chaijin frowned, wondering if this brat still has a trump card. Forget it, I'll kill this brat first. Zhang Chaijin's heart hardened. He didn't have time to think too much and directly slapped Yi Hao's head. Close. Zhang Chaijin couldn't help but feel excited when he saw his palm getting closer to Yi Hao's head. No matter what trump card Yi Hao had, as long as he killed Yi Hao, everything would be resolved. Moreover, he would obtain a large amount of holy elixir. Chapter 525. That's strange. Zhang Chaijin's mind raced, because he noticed that Yi Hao was actually still calm and composed at this moment, and he revealed a relaxed expression. Is he not afraid of death, or is he scared out of his wits? Before he could attack Yi Hao, a thunderous voice rang in his ears. How dare you hurt my master? Go to hell. Zhang Chaijin was startled by the sudden roar. The palm technique that was attacking Yi Hao couldn't help but pause. I gave you a chance, but you didn't take it. Yi Hao's voice had barely faded when Zhang Chaijin looked over. He realized that Yi Hao had disappeared. He could feel 2 powerful auras on his left and right. Oh no! Zhang Chaijin's heart skipped a beat. He knew that he had fallen into Yi Hao's trap. Zhang Chaijin immediately ran upward. I had already expected this. Zhuge Liang, who was on top of Zhang Chaijin's head, fanned his feather fan and attacked Zhang Chaijin. Zhang Chaijin's face changed. He did not expect Yi Hao to have such a trump card and spend so much effort to deal with him. Zhang Chaijin knew that he was no match for 3 martial gods. He shouted, "Why aren't you attacking? Don't you want the holy elixir?" As soon as Zhang Chaijin's voice fell, the remaining people who were hiding in the dark no longer hid and flew out. In an instant, 4 low-level martial gods and more than a dozen martial saints flew toward Zhuge Liang in an attempt to save Zhang Chaijin. "Since all of you have come out, stay here." Yi Hao shouted and summoned more than 1,000 ancient demonic beasts. These ancient demonic beasts came in different shapes and sizes. Everyone looked at the 1,000 ancient demonic beasts and did not understand what Yi Hao was trying to do. "Ha ha! Are you trying to use these martial emperor demonic beasts to deal with us?" Zhang Chaijin looked at the scene as if he had seen the biggest joke in the world. No matter how powerful these martial emperor demonic beasts were, he could kill dozens of them with a flip of his hand. As a martial god, he did not care about these ancient demonic beasts. "What are you doing?" Zhang Chaijin saw Yi Hao take out a handful of holy elixirs and immediately asked nervously. At the same time, he anxiously shouted, "Kill these beasts! We can't waste these holy elixirs." Zhang Chaijin thought that Yi Hao wanted to destroy all the saint elixirs in a life-and-death struggle. Hearing Zhang Chaijin's words and seeing the divine elixir in Yi Hao's hand, several thousand martial sage and martial emperor-level warriors immediately rushed towards the ancient demonic beast without hesitation. Let them tremble. Looking at the crowd that was charging at him, Yi Hao threw the peak martial sage elixir in front of each of the ancient demonic beasts. All the ancient beasts immediately swallowed all the peak martial sage pills. "My divine elixir pill." Zhang Chaijin looked on with a pained expression. More than 1,000 ancient beasts had swallowed the divine elixir pill. "Hurry up and kill that brat. We can't let him continue to waste the holy elixir." Zhang Chaijin pointed at Yi Hao and said angrily. Everyone present looked at Yi Hao with a pained expression. "Roar." Suddenly, one of the 1,000 ancient beasts let out a long roar into the sky. The roar of the ancient beast immediately caught everyone's attention. They saw that the giant lion, which was only 100 meters in size, was growing rapidly. It grew to more than 300 meters in size. "Roar." The giant lion took advantage of the fact that everyone was in a daze and bit at the person who was attacking it. In an instant, a martial sage and more than a dozen martial emperors were eaten by the giant lion. It has broken through. It must be at least at the level of a martial sage. When the crowd saw this, they were all shocked. "Roar, roar, roar." Before the crowd could even recover from their shock, more and more ancient mutated beasts were howling furiously as their bodies began to grow larger. "Run!" It was unknown who shouted, but everyone immediately fled backwards. After all, there were more than 1,000 ancient beasts at the peak martial sage realm. At this moment, their advantage in numbers was completely gone. Although there were more than 500 martial sages among them, their cultivation was uneven. How could they be a match for the 1,000 ancient beasts at the peak martial sage realm? Don't even think about running. Yi Hao laughed coldly and immediately summoned 2,000 ancient beasts. He fed them the peak martial sage elixir. Roar, roar, roar. The 2,000 ancient beasts continued to have breakthroughs in their cultivation. In the blink of an eye, they had reached the peak martial sage realm. What kind of divine elixir is this? This is too insane. When the crowd saw the power of the peak martial sage elixir, they were all shocked. But then, they ran away like crazy. What a joke. There were more than 3,000 ancient beasts at the peak martial sage realm. How could they fight them? Don't panic. They're just demonic beasts at the peak martial sage realm. You're all martial gods. Follow me and kill these beasts. Zhang Chaijin quickly recovered from the shock and shouted to the martial gods. Let's work together and break through. The martial gods gathered together. These beasts are a bit strange. They seem to be more powerful than normal beasts. The martial gods fought against the ancient beasts. They had thought that they could kill the ancient beasts in one blow, but the result was beyond their expectations. Their attacks landed on the ancient beasts' bodies, but they could only leave some light wounds. Obviously, this was different from what they had expected. Moreover, they're only at the peak martial saint realm. No matter what, they are comparable to a first-order martial god. The martial gods thought bitterly to themselves. Even the martial gods were in such a state. Needless to say, the martial saints and martial emperors were reduced to cannon fodder. Basically, the ancient beasts killed one person with each bite. I can't hold on anymore. Zhang Chaijin felt bitter in his heart. He alone had to deal with several hundred ancient beasts. The more he fought, the weaker he became. He couldn't kill these ancient beasts in one blow, but he had to bear the brunt of their attacks. The other martial gods didn't fare any better. Each of them had a bitter expression on their faces as they gritted their teeth and fought against the ancient beasts. Let me see how long you guys can hold on. Yi Hao actually summoned more than 1,000 heaven-devouring rats. The martial gods glanced at the heaven-devouring rats. They had heard of the heaven-devouring rat's reputation before. However, the heaven-devouring rat's cultivation was too low to cause them any harm. But if these heaven-devouring rats really broke through to the peak martial saint realm, then it was no laughing matter. They estimated that the heaven-devouring rats could take a bite out of them. Soon, the heaven-devouring rats completed their breakthrough and joined the battle, attacking the martial gods. The martial gods, who were already at a disadvantage, felt like crying at this moment. Chapter 5:26. My lord, we can keep these martial gods for our own use, Zhuge Liang said as he looked at Yi Hao, who was sitting on the heavenly dragon throne. I'll leave this matter to you. Yi Hao knew how precious these martial gods were. Moreover, it was better to keep them for his own use than to kill them. Moreover, these people were just greedy and did not have any deep hatred for him. However, as martial gods, they were all proud people and would not surrender so easily. Moreover, Yi Hao did not want to waste the mind control pill on these people. Stop! With Zhuge Liang's command, all the ancient beasts and sky-devouring rats stopped attacking. At this moment, everyone heaved a sigh of relief and looked nervously at Yi Hao and Zhuge Liang. My lord is merciful and has given you a way out. I wonder if you want it? Zhuge Liang said with a smile as he fanned himself. Would you be so kind? Zhang Chaijin sneered. It seems like you don't want this chance. Zhuge Liang shook his head and smiled. Then he ordered kill. With Zhuge Liang's order, the ancient beasts and sky-devouring rats immediately pounced on Zhang Chaijin. Zhang Chaijin's expression changed. When he saw Zhuge Liang's mocking smile, he immediately understood that Zhuge Liang wanted to kill the chicken to warn the monkey. Zhang Chaijin could not help but feel regret. However, the ancient beasts were already in front of him, and he could only grit his teeth and endure. However, this time, the ancient beasts did not care about their lives and attacked him. Zhang Chaijin wanted to admit defeat. However, before he could say anything, the sky-devouring rats had already started biting his body. He thought that his body was very strong, but it was as weak as tofu in front of the sky-devouring rats. In the blink of an eye, Zhang Chaijin's body was completely devoured. Zhang Chaijin's screams finally stopped. However, the sound of the sky-devouring rats chewing was left. Many martial gods and martial sages felt their scalps go numb when they saw this scene. This was because they could end up like Zhang Chaijin at any time. At this moment, everyone looked at the ancient beasts around them vigilantly. At the same time, they looked nervously at Yi Hao and Zhuge Liang. Is there anyone else who is dissatisfied? Please continue. Zhuge Liang scanned the crowd and asked. Everyone lowered their heads. No one was willing to be the first bird to stick their heads out. Everyone remained silent. After all, everyone could see that whoever stood out now would be killed. Moreover, it was not a normal death, but a death without a complete corpse. They were even eaten alive by rats. Just thinking about it made them feel disgusted. If you want to live, swear to pledge allegiance to my lord. Otherwise, you will die, Zhuge Liang threatened. However, he also knew that there was no lack of arrogant people among these people. So he quickly added, just think about it. My family's master is not even 25 years old, yet he's already a saint-grade alchemist. What? When everyone heard Zhuge Liang's words, they all looked at Yi Hao in shock. They could tell that Yi Hao wasn't too old, but they didn't expect Yi Hao to be less than 25 years old. To become a saint-stage apothecary before the age of 25, was this even possible? However, the pills that Yi Hao refined cannot be faked. One had to know that the martial gods present were at least a few thousand years old. This was considered young among the martial gods. This was because some martial sages had reached a few thousand years old. However, Yi Hao was not even 25 years old, yet he had so many experts under him. Moreover, he was a saint-grade alchemist. To reach such a realm at such a young age, he was probably the only one in the myriad kingdom continent. The four old ancestors were also shocked. Although they also thought that Yi Hao was young, this was too young. Thinking about the gap between themselves and Yi Hao, they instantly had the heart to die. Moreover, when they heard Zhuge Liang's words, what everyone noticed was not only Yi Hao's talent, but also Yi Hao's background. This was because a person, no matter how powerful his talent was, he still needed a huge pair of wings to protect him in order to grow. From the looks of it, Yi Hao had so many martial gods by his side. If someone said that Yi Hao did not have a strong background, they would not believe it. Everyone had all kinds of guesses in their hearts. This trick of coercion and bribery is really used perfectly. Guo Jinyu looked at Zhuge Liang and thought to himself, if it were him, he would probably rely on Yi Hao. After all, one side was death, and the other side was a master with a promising future. Moreover, there might be a strong background behind him. It was obvious at a glance which one to choose. In fact, except for Zhuge Liang, everyone present thought that Yi Hao had a mysterious and strong background. After all, no matter how powerful his talent was, he could not become a saint-grade alchemist at such a young age. This was definitely nurtured by a large amount of cultivation resources. Moreover, Yi Hao's cultivation was at the 7th order martial emperor realm. He might be the lowest among the people present. He was also the one that everyone looked down on the most. After all, the people present who were still alive were at least martial sages. However, when they thought of Yi Hao's age, which was less than 25 years old, they realized that he had reached the 7th order martial emperor realm. They could only use the word heaven-defying to describe him. Time is precious. Hurry up. Yi Hao pretended to be impatient as he sat on the heavenly dragon throne. Sensing Yi Hao's emotions, many of the ancient mutated beasts immediately cooperated and growled in a low voice. Everyone, it is not easy to cultivate. You should cherish it. Who knows what will happen in your next life? No matter how good your talent is in your next life, it is still your next life. Zhuge Liang continued. Indeed, after Zhuge Liang said this, many people's expressions changed. It was not that they were unwilling to rely on Yi Hao, but they had to swear an oath to do so. Swearing an oath would be restricted by the power of the martial Tao. If they entered the cycle of reincarnation, their talent in their next life would be lower. Therefore, many cultivators were unwilling to do this. After all, no one could guarantee that they could break through the martial god realm in one go and live forever. Therefore, more people had to think about their next life. They were not willing to sacrifice their next life in exchange for a lowly life. However, Zhuge Liang was right. The next life was destined to be the next life. If they did not understand what was going on in this life, how could they think about the next life? When this door opened in everyone's hearts, they instantly became enlightened and no longer felt conflicted. I am willing to swear an oath. However, you cannot humiliate me. You cannot treat me as a slave. Otherwise, even if I die, I will not agree, one of the martial gods said, wavering. Of course. Seeing that someone agreed, Yi Hao rejoiced. He knew that these people had been convinced by Zhuge Liang. Seeing that someone had agreed, the remaining people also began to swear an oath. After all, it was not easy to cultivate to this step. Only they knew how difficult it was to cultivate. That was thousands of years of bitter cultivation. No one was willing to waste it. Chapter 5:27. This harvest is not bad. Yi Hao and Guo Jinyu went back to Gedanzan. This time, not only did he obtain 20,000 peak martial saint pills, but he also obtained 13 low-level martial gods and more than 300 martial saints. However, Yi Hao found it a pity that most of these people were just independent cultivators and did not have any forces under their command. Even so, he was very satisfied to be able to obtain 13 low-level martial gods at once, even though they were only low-level martial gods. Young Master Yi Hao, did you cause that commotion? The first Supreme Elder immediately asked when he returned to Gedanzan. Yi Hao nodded. He did not expect to be able to see the commotion in Gedanzan. It was no wonder that so many strong cultivators were attracted. Seeing Yi Hao nod, the first Supreme Elder was shocked. He wondered how many holy pills it took to cause such a huge commotion. Yi Hao, are you all right? Yi Hao, are the pills done with their tribulations? When Mu Qingyu and Guo Shuifu saw Yi Hao return, they hurriedly came up to him and asked with concern, I'm fine. The pills are done with their tribulations. Yi Hao revealed a gratified smile when he saw the two women's concerned expressions. All right, how much longer until the grand ceremony? Yi Hao had lost track of time because he had been refining pills in the sacred cauldron hall for many days. 13 more days, Guo Shuifu said immediately. So fast, Yi Hao was a little surprised. He did not expect time to pass so quickly. It's still too early to rush back now. It would take at least 4 to 5 days to rush back to the Fire Dragon Empire from Gedanzan. Yi Hao was thinking about setting up a transmission array in Yanlong's camp. That way, he would not have to waste so much time. Yi Hao looked in the direction of the Beast Roar Valley. He guessed that there was an origin fragment in the Beast Roar Valley. However, he had asked Gui Yifan before, but Gui Yifan said that she did not know. Yi Hao believed that with the help of the mind control pill, Gui Yifan would not lie to him. Hence, he had to go to the Beast Roar Valley to investigate. However, he did not have enough time. The Fire Emperor and the others were probably waiting anxiously. Hence, he had to rush back as soon as possible. Uncle Guo, the Myriad Kingdom Grand Ceremony is about to begin. I have to go back first, Yi Hao immediately said to Guo Jinyu. Hurry up and go back. We have important matters to attend to. He had also just found out that the country that shocked the dynasty rankings and caused a stir in the entire continent was actually a country under Yi Hao's command. Hishan, calm. The Fire Emperor looked up into the sky and muttered to himself anxiously. Fire Emperor, there's no point in being anxious. Our Lord will be back soon. Although Emperor Sun was also anxious, he still tried to persuade the Fire Emperor. That's right. Our Lord must have unfinished business. Isn't there still a few days before the grand ceremony? Chun Ziqiao said. I'm just anxious. Recently, Hishan has become more and more arrogant. The Fire Emperor gnashed his teeth in anger at the mention of Hishan. Because Hishan had been making a lot of noise, Yanlong's camp did not react at all. Hence, the morale of Yanlong's camp had hit rock bottom. On the other hand, the morale of Hishan's camp was rising. The most direct effect of this was that the dragon energy of Yanlong's camp started to decrease. Furthermore, many citizens started to flee the country. The population of the Fire Empire had been decreasing rapidly. The most fatal thing was that he had received many secret reports. Many of the civil and military officials had started to become active. However, in order to stabilize the situation, the second round of the grand ceremony had yet to begin. The countries could not have internal strife. Hence, he could only turn a blind eye and pretend that he didn't see anything. He was afraid that he wouldn't be able to control his temper and kill those who had thoughts of betraying the country. More importantly, the second round of the grand ceremony had yet to begin. Hishan's camp had already sent out troops to patrol around Yanlong's camp. However, they couldn't make up their minds because they were no match for Hishan's camp. Through the 3 imperial empires, Hishan's camp had recently roped in more than 30 imperial empires. There were more than 20 martial sages, and this was not including the martial sages from the 3 imperial empires. Among them, there were less than 10 martial sages. Furthermore, there was no need to mention the difference in soldiers. The three imperial empires alone were enough to crush Yinlong's camp. Actually, they felt that Yinlong's camp was going to lose this time. They couldn't think of any way that Yi Hao could help Yinlong's camp win. Everyone, you don't seem to be in a good mood. You all look miserable. Suddenly, a voice sounded. Everyone hurriedly raised their heads, and their faces were instantly filled with joy, because the source of this voice was none other than their lord, Yi Hao, who had haunted their dreams. "Greetings, Lord." Everyone reacted and hurriedly bowed. "Lord, you're finally back. Where did you go? I was so worried." Seeing Yi Hao's sudden return, the Fire Emperor was still in disbelief. However, he was soon filled with excitement and joy. After all, during the time that Yi Hao was gone, the person he thought about the most day and night was Yi Hao. "I think you're thinking about the grand ceremony." Yi Hao could see through the Fire Emperor's thoughts and laughed. Seeing that Yi Hao had seen through his thoughts, the Fire Emperor felt a little embarrassed and started to complain. "My beloved subjects, you've suffered." After hearing their complaints, Yi Hao could feel the pressure in their hearts. "Lord, what should we do now? Should we admit defeat and surrender?" The Fire Emperor looked at Yi Hao anxiously. This was because he realized that even though Yi Hao was back, Yi Hao didn't seem to have changed at all. "What else can we do? Kill him." Yi Hao finished speaking and took out the Imperial Jade Seal, preparing to agree to the competition. "Lord, please reconsider. The opponents are too strong. Do you have any countermeasures?" "That's right, Lord. The opponents are more than 30 empires and 3 empires. We're no match for them." "Lord, do we have any reinforcements? We can't just be hot-blooded and impulsive." Everyone was suppressed by Hishan's camp. Although they were hoping that Yi Hao would agree to the competition, they couldn't help but feel nervous when Yi Hao actually agreed to it. It wasn't that they weren't confident. It was just that the difference in strength was too great. "Why? Don't you all believe in me?" Yi Hao raised his eyebrows and asked. "We don't dare." Everyone immediately replied. However, they were still curious as to where Yi Hao's confidence came from. Chapter 528. Everyone looked at the Fire Emperor curiously. They wanted to know what the Fire Emperor wanted to ask. Yi Hao nodded and signaled for the Fire Emperor to ask. "My lord, are there any of our people in those empires?" The Fire Emperor thought back to the previous incident and felt that it would be the same this time. When everyone heard the Fire Emperor's words, their eyes lit up as they looked at Yi Hao expectantly. If it was really like what the Fire Emperor said, then Yinlong's camp might have a chance of winning. "No," Yi Hao replied honestly. "Huh?" Everyone was stunned. "My lord, are you sure?" The Fire Emperor couldn't believe it and asked again. He really couldn't understand. If the other side didn't have any of Yi Hao's men, then how could Yi Hao compete with them? If not for the fact that Yi Hao was their lord, they would have gone crazy by now. After all, they thought that once Yi Hao returned, they would have a chance of winning the competition. But now, there was no hope at all. Looking at everyone's expressions, Yi Hao smiled and didn't say anything. He took out the Imperial Jade Seal and agreed to the competition. "Your Majesty, this..." Everyone was stunned. They didn't expect Yi Hao to agree to the competition. The officials weren't the only ones who were shocked. Many people in the 10,000 kingdoms were shocked as well. This was because they thought that Yinlong's camp wouldn't dare to agree to the competition. After all, when compared to Hishan's camp, it was obvious who was stronger and who was weaker. But in the end, they didn't understand why the Fire Dragon Empire agreed to the competition. "Your Majesty, there's good news." At this moment, Emperor Hishan was in the palace. A minister immediately reported to Emperor Hishan. "I already know." Emperor Hishan was all smiles. He was in a good mood. Yinlong's camp is courting death. They can't blame me. Although he didn't think much of Yinlong's camp, he didn't let his guard down. Hence, he had been increasing his own strength. He wanted to shock the entire continent with a single feat. He wanted to suppress all the other empires. It wasn't impossible for him to become an imperial dynasty and break through to the next level. From his point of view, Yinlong's camp was his best stepping stone. At first, he was worried that Yanlong's camp wouldn't agree to the competition. Then, he wouldn't be able to achieve the effect he wanted. Hence, he provoked Yanlong's camp. Hishan's camp was in order for Yanlong's camp to agree to the competition. Fortunately, everything he had done was not in vain. The Flame Dragon camp finally agreed to the battle. This allowed him to finally put down the huge rock that had been hanging in his heart. Congratulations, Alliance Master Hishan. The Flame Dragon camp has finally agreed to fight. At this moment, some of the emperors who had stayed in the Hashan dynasty hurried over to congratulate him. This time, the leader of the Hishan alliance will definitely be able to suppress all the other empires and be recorded in the annals of history. That Flame Dragon camp really doesn't know what's good for them. They even dared to agree to this competition. At this moment, many emperors were discussing amongst themselves. However, most of them were trying to suck up to the Mountain Emperor. Everyone this time, we must make all the empires in the myriad kingdom continent tremble for our emperor. Emperor Hashan waved his hand and lowered everyone's voices. Emperor Hashan was in a great mood. It was as if he could already see himself crushing Yanlong's camp. Hishan is mighty. Hishan is mighty. Hishan is mighty. The emperors hurriedly shouted. After all, they were all forces close to Emperor Hashan's camp. Moreover, they weren't as strong as Emperor Hashan's camp. In order to survive, they could only bow their heads to Emperor Hashan. The entire continent was looking forward to the start of the second round of the Myriad Kingdom ceremony. Time flew. A few days passed in the blink of an eye. However, many people were waiting anxiously. The second round of the Myriad Kingdom ceremony was about to begin. Master, our soldiers are ready. The Fire Emperor had already arrived in front of Yi Hao and informed him. The Fire Emperor had a nervous look on his face. If he were to rely on these soldiers, he would probably be sending them to their deaths. There's no need for that. Bring these troops to the vicinity of Hishan's camp. Yi Hao waved his hand and said, What? What about the Myriad Kingdom ceremony? Hearing Yi Hao's words, the Fire Emperor was stunned. He didn't understand what Yi Hao meant. If they were to go to the vicinity of Hishan's camp, they wouldn't be able to participate in the Myriad Kingdom ceremony. You just have to wait and subdue the Hishan's camp. Yi Hao said casually. The Fire Emperor looked at Yi Hao in shock. My lord, are you going to fight against Hishan's camp alone? The Fire Emperor guessed. He couldn't help but advise. My lord, you have to think twice. You're up against 30 empires and 3 imperial empires. The Fire Emperor was starting to suspect that Yi Hao had given up on the idea of breaking a broken jar. As for fighting against the entire Hishan's camp alone, the Fire Emperor didn't even dare to think about it. My lord, our army is ready. Your Majesty, our army is ready too. At this moment, Chun Ziqiao and Emperor Sun walked in. What's going on? Chun Ziqiao looked at the Fire Emperor's anxious expression and couldn't help but ask. My lord wants to fight against the entire Hishan's camp alone. What? Hearing the Fire Emperor's words, Chun Ziqiao and Emperor Sun were shocked. My lord, is this for real? Are you really going to fight against the entire Hishan's camp alone? That can't be. My lord, this isn't a child's play. Chun Ziqiao and Emperor Sun hurriedly said. Fighting against the entire Hishan's camp alone was inconceivable. Who said that I'm going to fight alone? Yi Hao asked with a smile. Everyone was stunned. The Fire Emperor was also dumbfounded. He thought to himself, could it be that Yi Hao brought everyone but him to the Myriad Kingdom ceremony? Everyone else also looked at the Fire Emperor. You don't have to look at him. I'm not bringing you guys this time. Not us. Could it be someone else? Everyone was even more curious. However, Yi Hao didn't bring anyone back this time. Actually, they didn't know that Yi Hao had placed all the ancient beasts in the Dragon Prison Lake. Yi Hao was confident that the ancient beasts could wipe out the entire Hishan's camp. If he brought the Fire Emperor and his soldiers along, they would be a burden to him. There were 20,000 ancient beasts at the peak of the Martial Saint realm. Not to mention some empires, they could even wipe out an imperial dynasty or a holy dynasty. Rumble. Suddenly, thunder rumbled in the sky. The Myriad Kingdom ranking board appeared again. This meant that the second round of the Myriad Kingdom ceremony had begun. The second round was a battle between the victors of the first round. If they could win, they would definitely be able to reach a higher level. Yihao tossed out the Imperial Jade Seal, and a huge golden door immediately appeared. This was the difference between the first round. In the first round, they had to find the entrance to the battle. In the second round, the location of the Imperial Jade Seal was the location of the entrance. Chapter 529. It could be said that the battle between Yanlong's camp and Hishan's camp was the highlight of the tournament. Everyone was looking forward to the final outcome of the battle between the two camps. Would Hishan's camp completely crush Yanlong's camp, or would Yanlong's camp create another miracle like last time? After seeing Yihao enter the secret realm, the Fire Emperor and the others were still in a daze. "Do you think our Lord can do it?" the Fire Emperor asked worriedly. "Forget it. Let's do as the Lord has instructed." Emperor Sun also had a worried look on his face. Looking at the battle rankings, the battle between Yanlong's camp and Hishan's camp was very eye-catching. As for Hishan's camp, their dragon power alone had reached 900 million, and the countries behind them were lined up in a row. Counting carefully, all the countries added together reached a total of 41 countries. It was not like what Emperor Hishan had said, only 30 countries. Looking at Yanlong's camp, it was unusually bleak. Yanlong's camp only had the Fire Dragon Empire, and they only had 14 dragon power. This huge difference made everyone speechless. This is too interesting. Yanlong's camp is going all out, and they don't care about their reputation anymore. Are my eyes playing tricks on me? Could it be that the Fire Empire, Sun Empire, and the others don't dare to participate in the tournament and let the Fire Dragon Empire go up? Their opponent has 900 million dragon power, and they have 14 dragon power. How dare they compete? What a disgrace. This isn't just a disgrace, it's simply shameless. If I were in Yanlong's camp, I would be too embarrassed to go out. It's too embarrassing. I thought this tournament would be interesting, but it seems like it's not interesting at all. Forget it. Let's watch the other countries. 900 million against 14 dragon power. It's not worth watching. You made me look forward to it for so long, and you only let me watch this. On the 10,000 Kingdoms continent, those who were looking forward to seeing Yanlong's camp create a miracle were all disappointed. They didn't expect the Fire Empire and the other empires to not participate in the tournament. Even with the Fire Empire and the other empires, the chances of Yanlong's camp winning were pitifully small. Now that only Yanlong's camp was participating in the tournament, it was even more impossible for them to win. Unless the Fire Dragon Empire sent out all martial gods, they might still have a chance of winning. But in the eyes of the crowd, this was almost impossible. That was because if the Flame Dragon Empire was truly capable of taking out that many martial gods, they wouldn't have ended up in such a situation. They only had 14 dragon power. As a result, when everyone looked over, astonished voices once again filled the sky and covered the earth. Because the Fire Dragon Empire, a country with 14 dragon power points, was going to fight to the death with a faction with 900 million dragon power points. How laughable it all was. It was like a newborn baby challenging a world-class boxing champion to a life and death duel. This was a naked provocation to the Hishan camp. Is the Fire Dragon Empire crazy? Who knows? Not only did they not admit defeat, they even started a fight to the death. I really don't know what they're thinking. The ruler of the Fire Dragon Empire is really a weirdo. Looks like the Fire Dragon Empire is in charge of being funny. After the crowd recovered from their shock, they all mocked the Fire Dragon Empire for overestimating themselves. Preposterous! How dare they provoke this emperor? Emperor Hishan was originally distressed about not being able to devour the dragon power of the Fire Empire and the other empires. Who would have thought that Yihao would fight to the death? Since you want to play, this emperor will play with you. Emperor Hishan was slightly angered and immediately agreed to fight to the death. Find a Fire Dragon Empire for this emperor. If you find anyone from the Fire Dragon Empire, there's no need to report. Tear them to pieces. Emperor Hashan commanded the army of 900 million. After the army received the order, they immediately searched for Yi Hao. Everyone thought that with Emperor Hashan's temper, he would definitely crush the Fire Dragon Empire after entering the mystic realm. But after day and night, there were still no changes in the Yanlong camp and the Hishan camp. Reporting to Alliance leader, we didn't find anyone from the Fire Dragon Empire. An emperor immediately came forward to report. Hearing this, Emperor Hashan couldn't help but frown. He looked slightly angry and slammed the table. No one. Did you find a Fire Dragon Empire's palace? We did, but there wasn't a single person in the Fire Dragon Empire. That emperor was the person that Emperor Hashan sent to the Fire Dragon Empire to ambush. He quickly replied, "How is that possible? Can people fly away?" Emperor Hashan shouted angrily. He originally wanted to crush the Fire Dragon Empire after entering the mystic realm and let Yi Hao know the consequences of provoking him. But when his army arrived at the Fire Dragon Empire, what they found was the Fire Dragon Empire. There was no one there. I tore down the entire Fire Dragon Empire, but I didn't find a single person. That emperor said bitterly. He originally thought that he would be able to make a great contribution and make Emperor Hashan look at him in a different light. Who knew that his efforts would be for naught? He didn't even find a single person. Send my order to everyone. They must find the people from the Fire Dragon Empire as soon as possible. I don't have the time to waste with them. I'm just a little rat. Let's see how long you can hide. Emperor Hashan snorted. He thought that Yi Hao was hiding on purpose. Have you found anyone? Emperor Hashan asked the emperors the next day. Not on my side. Not on my side either. Same here. I didn't find a single person. The emperors all spoke with ugly expressions. Alliance leader Hashan, have we been fooled by the Fire Dragon Empire? One of the emperors suddenly asked. The Fire Dragon Empire dares to fool me. If I catch them, I will tear them to pieces. Emperor Hashan felt that the emperor's words made sense the more he analyzed them. He now began to suspect that the Fire Dragon Empire had been fooling him from the beginning and made him agree to fight to the death. Now that the fight to the death had been activated, if he couldn't find Yi Hao, he wouldn't be able to kill Yi Hao. He wouldn't be able to make a move. If they couldn't find Yi Hao, why would they continue to be in a stalemate like this? He had more than 900 million soldiers on his side, but they couldn't find anyone from the Fire Dragon Empire, even though they had found Yi Hao. How laughable would it be if word got out? Chapter 530. The emperors felt bitter in their hearts. Although the secret realm wasn't very big, it was still the size of 3 imperial dynasties and more than 30 imperial dynasties. Looking for Yi Hao in such a large area was undoubtedly like looking for a needle in a haystack. Most importantly, Yi Hao wasn't fixed in place. Yi Hao could always move around. How were they supposed to find him? Go and find him. I want to see him in 3 days if he's dead or alive. Emperor Hashan roared furiously. Yes, the emperors could only agree when they saw the angry Emperor Hashan. After all, Emperor Hashan was the most powerful person here. They all followed Emperor Hashan's lead. Following Emperor Hashan's order, the 900 million troops started searching again. Meanwhile, outside the secret realm, there was an uproar. What the hell is the Hishan camp doing? Can't they even deal with Yanlong's camp? It's already been 2 or 3 days. Is the Hishan camp playing around? There's such a huge disparity in strength, yet they still can't end the battle quickly. The Hishan camp is really something. Just wait and see. There's no point in being anxious. Everyone started to clamor. In their opinion, Yanlong's camp should have been destroyed in the blink of an eye. It was beyond their expectations that they could survive for so long. At this moment, Yi Hao was strolling around the secret realm. System, you're saying that there are origin fragments in this secret realm? Why can't I find them? Although Yi Hao was strolling around, he was very fast. He was like a bolt of lightning as he flashed through the secret realm. Yi Hao had no intention of fooling around with the Hishan camp. Instead, as soon as he entered the secret realm, the system told him that there might be origin fragments in the secret realm. He had only found 2 origin fragments so far. Moreover, this secret realm would only appear in the Myriad Kingdom Grand Ceremony. If there were any fragments here, he definitely couldn't let them go. Moreover, he had to search for them now. If he missed this opportunity, he didn't know when he would be able to enter the secret realm again. Moreover, if he obtained all the origin fragments, he would unlock all the generals and all the magical beasts in the Myriad Kingdom continent. Then, he would be able to unify the Myriad Kingdom continent. However, Yihao had been searching day and night for 2 or 3 days, but he still couldn't find any traces of the origin fragments. You could take out an origin fragment. You might be able to sense its information. The system hurriedly said when it heard Yihao's question, "Why didn't you say so earlier?" Hearing the system's words, Yihao grumbled. For the past 2 days, he was as tired as a dog. He was like a headless fly running around aimlessly. In the end, the system only told him the method to find the origin fragment now. You didn't ask. The system. Yihao was speechless. He definitely wouldn't fight with the system. He'd better find a source fragment first. Yihao immediately took out the origin fragment. Rumble. Suddenly, Yihao felt the ground beneath his feet tremble. What's going on? Yihao was shocked by the violent tremor. Yihao wasn't the only one. The secret realms of all the empires were trembling violently. Many empires stopped fighting at this moment and looked at the sky in confusion. Secret realms were the most stable. They never knew that secret realms could tremble. Moreover, there was no record of such a thing in the history of the Myriad Kingdom ceremony. Why did I feel a violent tremor just now? What happened? Emperor Hashan asked the emperors immediately. I felt it too. It's so strange. Why is the ground trembling? Who knows? I've attended the Myriad Kingdom ceremony a few times, but nothing like this has ever happened. This is definitely strange. It's impossible for the secret realm to tremble for no reason. Could it be that something is going to happen to the treasure in the secret realm? Everyone discussed. Although the speaker didn't mean it, the listener was interested. Emperor Hashan's eyes lit up when he heard that something was going to happen to the treasure. This secret realm was the most mysterious existence in the Myriad Kingdom continent. Moreover, this secret realm was full of mysteries. Although this secret realm had a long history, no one knew where it came from. If there was a treasure in here, it must be an incredible treasure. If there really was a treasure, he would make a killing after obtaining it. After all, everyone was ambitious. His ambition was even greater. Emperor Hashan was excited when he heard that there might be a treasure. Go and find out the reason for this tremor. Emperor Hashan ordered immediately. He couldn't calm down. Alliance Master Hishan, do you think that the Flame Dragon Camp is the cause of the trembling of the mystic realm? One of the emperors suddenly guessed. Emperor Hishan was startled. This wasn't impossible. If this treasure was obtained by Yen Long's camp, it would be troublesome. After all, they didn't know the use of this treasure. However, after thinking for a while, he relaxed. In his opinion, there was no treasure that could compare to an army of 900 million. Even if Yihao obtained the treasure in the end, he would have to obediently hand it over. After all, once the secret realm was opened, no one would be able to leave the secret realm until one side was completely dead. However, he still had a worry in his heart that he didn't dare to voice out. Yihao could commit suicide. After that, he could still leave the secret realm with the treasure. At the thought of this, Emperor Hashan ordered anxiously, "Go and find it. Find out what the treasure is and where the bastard from Yin Long's camp is." Everyone was also very curious about the treasure that might exist. They were also very enthusiastic about finding it. Moreover, they weren't just searching for the Hishan camp. They were also searching for the other warring dynasties. In order to find the treasure that might exist, they left the battlefield one by one and started searching for it in the secret realm. Could it be in the sky? Yihao didn't know that because of his actions, he had attracted the attention of all the dynasties. Moreover, hundreds of dynasties were searching for the origin fragment in the secret realm. Yihao sensed the connection between the origin fragment, and Yihao looked at the sky curiously. Forget it. Let's take a look first. Yihao felt that the secret realm wouldn't tremble for no reason. Therefore, the probability of the origin fragment existing in the secret realm was very high. At the thought of this, Yi Hao immediately rose from the ground and rushed into the sky. 10,000 meters, 20,000 meters, 30,000 meters. I can't take it anymore. I'm almost at my limit. Yi Hao panted heavily after flying for 30,000 meters. Even though he was a 7th Order Martial Emperor and could use the cultivation of a 7th Order Martial Saint, his body couldn't withstand flying so high. Chapter 531. What's that? Suddenly, Yi Hao saw two beams of light in the sky. One was gold, and the other was red. The red one was weaker, but Yi Hao immediately sensed that it was the origin fragment. Yi Hao was overjoyed when he saw this. He immediately flew upwards. However, as the saying went, looking at a mountain will kill a horse. The two beams of light seemed very close, but they were still tens of thousands of meters tall. Yi Hao gritted his teeth and continued flying upwards. Gradually, he began to feel tired. Gui Yifan. Yi Hao immediately summoned Gui Yifan. Master, Gui Yifan immediately bowed. Bring me up quickly. Yi Hao immediately said to Gui Yifan. Gui Yifan didn't waste any time. He grabbed Yi Hao's shoulder and flew towards the two beams of light. Yi Hao instantly felt much more relaxed after being carried by Gui Yifan. He couldn't help but exhale. It's so small. Yi Hao and Gui Yifan flew in front of the origin fragment and realized that it was only half the size of a normal origin fragment. This is a portal, teleportation door. Yi Hao looked at the giant golden door beside the origin fragment. This is the origin fragment. Collect it, and you will be able to form the origin fragment. The system seemed to have noticed Yi Hao's confusion and immediately explained. I see. Yi Hao nodded and reached out to take it. Wait a minute. The system immediately stopped Yi Hao when it saw that he was about to take the origin fragment. What's wrong? Yi Hao asked curiously. The system had never stopped him from doing anything. If you take the origin fragment, this world will be destroyed and the dragon power will be wasted. You can kill those people and take the origin fragment. It won't be too late. I see. Hearing the system's words, Yi Hao secretly rejoiced. Fortunately, the system had reminded him. Otherwise, the 900 million dragon power points would have been wasted. Yi Hao had already treated the 900 million dragon power as his own from the very beginning. After all, Yishan had provoked him. How could he not pay a price? Let's go and find Emperor Hashan. Yi Hao immediately said to Gui Yifan. What are you looking for? Soon, Yi Hao saw a group of soldiers searching for something. Of course, we're looking for treasures. The soldiers were so focused on searching that they didn't even look up at Yi Hao. Treasure? Could it be an origin source fragment? Yi Hao was shocked. He recalled the commotion he had caused in the mystic realm. He hadn't expected these people to react so quickly. However, it was fortunate that these people were searching in the wrong direction. If they were to search on the ground, they would never have thought that they would end up empty-handed. No, who are you? The search team immediately reacted and stared at Yi Hao, questioning him loudly. He's from Yanlong's camp. Kill him. Someone reacted immediately. He raised his weapon and rushed towards Yi Hao. Instantly, thousands of people reacted. They raised their weapons and rushed towards Yi Hao. Dying. Yi Hao snorted coldly. He took out his blood-stained dual sabers and began to fight. In the blink of an eye, thousands of dragon power points had been collected. The ground was littered with corpses. Next, Yi Hao let out all the primordial beasts that had reached the peak of Martial Saint, as well as the sky-devouring rats. Thousands of primordial beasts that were hundreds of meters long. Some of them were even thousands of meters long. It was a terrifying sight. Master, all the beasts had reached the level of Martial Saint and could speak. They all shouted at Yi Hao in unison. Kill them all. Leave no one in this mystic realm alive. Yi Hao ordered. Yes. In the blink of an eye, thousands of demonic beasts turned into black shadows and flew out. Roar. Instantly, the roars of the primordial beasts could be heard in the mystic realm. Ding dong. Congratulations on gaining 10 dragon power points. Ding dong. Congratulations on gaining 13 dragon power points. Ding dong. Congratulations on gaining 25 dragon power points. In an instant, Yi Hao could hear the system's notifications ringing in his mind. At this time, the entire 10,000 lands continent once again turned their attention to Yanlong's faction. How is this possible? Is the Fire Dragon Empire going to create another miracle? Oh my god, the dragon power is increasing at a rapid pace. Who is the one bullying who? No one would have thought that the show that they had been waiting for several days without seeing would happen so quickly. 14 dragon power points against 900 million dragon power points. And 14 dragon power points was killing 900 million dragon power points. Everyone was wondering if the Hishan faction was eating *T. Otherwise, why would they be beaten to such a state by the Fire Dragon Empire? Because in the blink of an eye, the Hishan faction had already lost tens of thousands of dragon power points. And the dragon power behind the Fire Dragon Empire's name could not be seen at all. That was because it kept on increasing and had no intention of stopping. Emperor's son, I'm not dreaming, right? What did the master do? If you ask me, who should I ask? At this moment, the Fire Emperor looked at Emperor's son, and the two of them stared at each other. The worry on their faces had completely disappeared and was replaced with shock and joy. We still can't see through the master. We shouldn't have doubted the master's power. The Fire Emperor sighed. I'm guessing that the master brought the martial gods to kill in the secret territory. Chen Ziqiao guessed. Even the martial gods don't have such speed. You have to know that according to the rules of the secret territory, only 14 people can be brought in. To them, even 14 martial gods wouldn't be able to kill in such a short time. Unless the Hishan faction members were just standing there in a daze and waiting to be slaughtered. What they didn't know was that there was indeed a limit to the number of soldiers in the secret territory. The amount of dragon power points one had when entering the secret territory would determine the number of soldiers one could bring in. What they didn't know was that there was no limit to the number of beasts one could bring in. Actually, even if they knew, it wouldn't be of much use. After all, if a martial artist controlled a few beasts, he would only be able to gain an advantage in a small-scale battle or in a one-on-one fight. And in the face of 900 million enemy soldiers, a few beasts wouldn't be of much use. Who would have thought that Yi Hao was able to control so many ancient beasts and even had the martial saint pills? Such a heaven-defying existence. Let the Hishan faction tremble in fear. Let them know the consequences of provoking me. Seeing thousands of ancient beasts charging out, Yi Hao wasn't satisfied. He immediately released another 5,000 ancient beasts and another 5,000 heaven-swallowing rats. Yi Hao then took out 10,000 martial saint pills. In the blink of an eye, another 10,000-strong army appeared in front of Yi Hao. Kill to your heart's content. Seeing the 10,000 beasts, Yi Hao laughed and ordered. Chapter 532. When the other emperors heard Emperor Hashan's roar, they were stunned at first. Then, they all looked at their own country's dragon power, their hearts filled with anger. Alliance leader Hishan, my country's dragon power is also decreasing. Mine too, it's decreasing rapidly. Why did the Fire Dragon Empire suddenly attack and kill so many of our people? The emperors were shocked. They didn't expect that they couldn't find Yi Hao after searching for several days. Yi Hao actually attacked them first. Your Majesty, demonic beasts. There are so many demonic beasts. At this moment, the door of the main hall was suddenly pushed open, and a general shouted in panic. Demonic beasts? What demonic beasts? How could there be demonic beasts in this mystic realm? Hearing the general's words, the emperors discussed among themselves. They were all puzzled and nervous at the same time. After all, what was decreasing was their country's dragon power, which was the most precious thing in a country. Every time, hundreds and thousands of demonic beasts fell. Although they all had tens of millions of dragon power, they couldn't withstand such a drop. Everyone looked at the general anxiously. What's going on? Tell me in detail, Emperor Hashan asked sternly. Seeing Emperor Hishan's unfriendly tone, the general trembled and immediately said, Countless demonic beasts rushed out of nowhere. They are all at the peak of the martial sage realm. They kill anyone they see. Our soldiers can't stop them at all. What? Peak martial sages? Where did so many powerful demonic beasts come from? When the emperors heard the general's words, they were all in disbelief. How many demonic beasts are there? Emperor Hashan's face turned ashen as he asked in a deep voice. He didn't have time to think about where these powerful demonic beasts came from. There are at least a few thousand of them. The general thought for a moment and said, "A few thousand demonic beasts and peak martial sages? Are you sure you're not joking?" The emperors were all shocked and asked the general. If there were only a few dozen peak martial sages, they could still accept it. But there were too many of them. There were a few thousand of them. If it was an Emperor Wu-level magical beast or a martial emperor-level magical beast, they could still barely accept it. But those were thousands of demonic beasts at the peak of the martial saint realm. At the very most, there were less than 30 martial sacred realm cultivators present. How are they supposed to play like this? I think we should just surrender and admit defeat. Judging from the situation, even if I don't admit defeat, I'll still be waiting for death. I might as well just surrender. I don't want to fight anymore. The emperors were in low spirits as they spoke anxiously. After all, if they were delayed for even a second, their dragon power would plummet. The decrease in dragon power was akin to cutting their hearts. Why are you panicking? Hearing the emperor's words, Emperor Hashan was enraged and roared. Besides, we've already started a war of attrition. Do you think the Fire Dragon Empire will let us go if we surrender? Upon hearing Emperor Hashan's words, everyone quieted down. They couldn't surrender even if they wanted to. At this moment, they regretted joining Emperor Hashan's camp. If they hadn't joined Emperor Hashan's camp, they wouldn't have fallen to such a state. Everyone looked at Emperor Hashan anxiously and clamored to be the first to speak. Emperor Hashan, we're here to help you. What do you think we should do now? We don't want our dragon power to disappear completely. We can't destroy the empire. Emperor Hashan, think of a way. It wasn't just the emperors. Even the generals of the three imperial empires looked at Emperor Hashan threateningly. Emperor Hashan, you have to bring us out safely. If we suffer heavy losses, Emperor Wen won't spare you. Emperor Wen's generals threatened him without holding back. Hearing Emperor Wen's generals' words, Emperor Hashan's face turned even uglier. He didn't care about the words of the other emperors. However, he had to listen to the words of the three imperial empires. Everyone be quiet. Emperor Hashan immediately signaled for everyone to be quiet. Everyone, think carefully. We have 900 million soldiers. Although they have a few thousand martial saint demonic beasts, they aren't demonic beasts. As long as they are demonic beasts, they aren't undefeatable. Since we can't win with our strength, we'll fight with our numbers. I don't believe that 900 million soldiers can't defeat a few thousand demonic beasts. Emperor Hashan scanned the crowd and encouraged them. As expected, the emperors calmed down and weren't as panicked as before. Some of them even nodded, thinking that what he said made sense. So we might as well fight it out with the Fire Dragon Empire. Let's see if their few thousand demonic beasts or our 900 million soldiers are stronger. Emperor Hashan's eyes shone brightly as he shouted passionately. That's right. Since it's already like this, we'll just be waiting for death. Let's fight it out with the Fire Dragon Empire. Let's fight it out with the Fire Dragon Empire. Let's show them the might of the Hishan camp. I agree too. Let's fight to the death with the Fire Dragon Empire. Fight to the death. Fight to the death. Fight to the death. Following which, the emperors shouted loudly, looking as if they were going to risk it all. Because even if they didn't risk it all, they had no choice. They couldn't surrender and could only burn their boats. Moreover, a few thousand peak martial saint demonic beasts looked very terrifying. However, 900 million soldiers weren't weak either. After all, these 900 million soldiers were the elites of the imperial empires and the three imperial empires. Their fighting strength was also extraordinary. Moreover, with 900 million soldiers, they might be able to defeat a few thousand demonic beasts. Good. Then it's decided. Everyone, lead your soldiers and kill the demonic beasts. Emperor Hashan immediately ordered. I'm afraid you won't be able to lead your soldiers." Just as the emperors were about to agree and walk out of the main hall, Yi Hao's voice suddenly came from the sky. The emperor's expressions changed, and they were shocked. They immediately looked up into the sky. Rumble! Suddenly, a large hole was smashed open in the 300-meter-tall golden palace. Crackling sounds could be heard as some black objects fell down. The emperors immediately dodged them. "You? Who are you?" Looking at the black corpses on the ground, the emperors' faces turned pale, because those black figures were the martial saints of the Hishan camp. Now all of them were here, and they were all beaten half to death. "Do you still need to ask who I am?" Yi Hao walked directly to the emperors. The emperors immediately opened up a path. It wasn't that they wanted to, but they couldn't help but feel fear in their hearts. Their legs didn't listen to them. The emperors looked at Yi Hao with a trace of fear in their eyes. They looked at Yi Hao as he walked towards Emperor Hishan. Chapter 533. Yi Hao glanced at Emperor Hishan and said rudely, "Get down." "Why should I? In front of so many emperors. How could he stand up just because he wanted to? Wouldn't that be too embarrassing? Why should I?" Yi Hao sneered and clapped his hands. Emperor Hishan was stunned. He didn't understand what Yi Hao meant. Squeak, squeak, squeak. What's that sound? The emperors looked around, wanting to know what was making that sound. "Hishan, alliance leader, under your feet." Suddenly, one of the emperors pointed at Emperor Hishan and said nervously. Everyone immediately looked at Emperor Hishan's feet and saw two rat heads that were a few meters long. They were drooling as they looked at Emperor Hishan. Emperor Hishan was also shocked. Sensing the cultivation of the two heaven-devouring rats, Emperor Hishan knew that his cultivation was definitely not on par with these two heaven-devouring rats. "Is this enough?" Yi Hao asked with a smile. Emperor Hishan was speechless. However, in front of these two heaven-devouring rats that were drooling over him, he still said unwillingly, "Yes." "Then get the hell out of here," Yi Hao roared. Emperor Hishan was very unhappy. However, he was not as strong as Yi Hao and could only walk down the dragon throne. "Eat it." With Yi Hao's command, he swallowed the dragon throne in an instant. Seeing the heaven-devouring rats' actions, the emperors swallowed their saliva. Yi Hao took out the dragon throne and sat on it lazily. He narrowed his eyes and looked at everyone. Although they saw Yi Hao's lazy appearance, they couldn't resist the majesty in Yi Hao's eyes. Everyone looked at Yi Hao guiltily. They wanted to know what Yi Hao wanted to do. After a long time, just as everyone was getting impatient, Yi Hao suddenly asked, "I heard that you guys have been quite troublesome these past 3 months. You've been constantly provoking the Fire Dragon Empire?" Hearing Yi Hao's cold voice, everyone felt as if they had been placed in an ice cave. Everyone's faces turned pale. They knew that it was finally time to settle the score. "I've lost this time. What do you want to do? Tell me," Emperor Hishan said directly. "It's nothing more than destroying the empire," Yi Hao said as if it was something insignificant. "Destroying the empire? If that's nothing, what could be more ruthless than that?" "What do you think?" Yi Hao asked. "Everyone has seen it. Since things have come to this, we have no choice but to fight it out with him," Emperor Hishan immediately said, stirring everyone's emotions. "Your Majesty Yanlong, did you see that? This was Emperor Hishan's own idea. It has nothing to do with us." "That's right, Your Majesty Yanlong. We have absolutely no ill intentions towards you. It was Emperor Hishan who forced us to do this." "Your Majesty Yanlong, if you want to blame someone, blame Emperor Hishan. Please don't blame us." To Emperor Hishan's surprise, the emperors ignored him and smiled at Yi Hao. Upon hearing the emperor's words, Emperor Hishan's face instantly turned ashen. Emperor Hishan pointed at the emperors angrily. "You bunch of ingrates. How dare you turn your backs on us? I won't let you off so easily. This person is simply too annoying. I don't want to see him." Yi Hao glanced at Emperor Hishan and said in a displeased tone. Upon hearing Yi Hao's words, the emperors immediately understood what Yi Hao meant. Moreover, being called ingrates by Emperor Hishan really made them feel a little displeased and embarrassed. Kill him, someone shouted. The emperors all picked up their weapons and charged at Emperor Hashan. A bunch of fence-sitters. How dare you act so rashly? You don't know what's good for you. Emperor Hashan snorted coldly as he looked at the emperors charging at him. No matter how weak he was still a peak martial sage. None of the emperors present was a match for him. In the blink of an eye, 3 emperors had been defeated by him. The more the emperors fought, the more ferocious they became. Dozens of them directly engaged in battle. Activate the killing formation, Emperor Hashan suddenly roared. The emperors suddenly turned their spears and pointed at Yi Hao. So you have a backup plan. Yi Hao was slightly surprised as he looked at the emperors. Seeing Yi Hao's surprised expression, Emperor Hashan couldn't help but laugh coldly. You're still too naive. Do you really think that we'll turn against each other so easily? Kid, you're still no match for Emperor Hashan. Emperor Hashan had already expected you to do this. What do you think now? Little bastard, weren't you very arrogant? Show me what you've got now. The emperors kept changing their positions as they mocked Yi Hao. This killing formation should be able to deal with a beginner martial god. It seems like you've put in a lot of effort. Yi Hao glanced at the killing formation formed by the emperors. You're quite knowledgeable, kid. It would have taken a lot of effort to deal with you. I didn't expect you to be so arrogant and walk right into our trap. Emperor Hashan sneered. If Yi Hao had been under the protection of many demonic beasts, it would have been very difficult for them to form a killing formation and kill Yi Hao. However, it was different now. They could easily kill Yi Hao and then deal with the demonic beasts. It seems like you think you've won. Yi Hao smiled and looked at Emperor Hashan. Emperor Hashan also responded with a cold smile. What else? Ha ha ha. Yi Hao suddenly stood up and laughed loudly. The emperors were shocked by his laughter. One of them shouted, "What are you laughing at? A bunch of idiots." After Yi Hao finished speaking, he ignored the others and walked out of the hall. You want to leave? Go to hell. Emperor Hashan shouted. The emperors immediately charged at Yi Hao. How dare you hurt my lord? You're courting death. Suddenly, a cold shout came from the hall. The emperors were shocked. They didn't expect that there would be someone else in the hall. Kill him first. Hashan shouted at the emperors when he saw Gui Yifan suddenly appear. He knew that Gui Yifan couldn't be underestimated and immediately shouted at the emperors. A bunch of trash. Gui Yifan's figure flashed, and the others couldn't see him. In the next instant, everyone was sent flying. How powerful! He's definitely not a martial god below the 3rd order. Emperor Hashan panicked. Because this killing formation could barely deal with a 3rd order martial god, but it couldn't deal with Gui Yifan. Therefore, he knew that Gui Yifan was definitely stronger than a 3rd order martial god. I regret it, Emperor Hashan shouted. His face was filled with unwillingness. The reason for that was because this killing formation had originally required the 30-odd martial sages to bring out its strongest battle prowess. The one who should be defeated now should be Gui Yifan and not them. Chapter 534. Just as everyone was puzzled, more than 10 people suddenly appeared in the main hall. The emperors looked carefully. The more they looked, the more shocked they became, because these people were all in the martial god realm. Emperor Hashan's entire face turned snow white. He muttered in disbelief, "Impossible, this is impossible, this is definitely not true. Kill them." After Yi Hao finished speaking, he left the main hall. In an instant, the gods attacked, and all the emperors fell. Even before they died, the emperors still had a look of disbelief on their faces. They were roaring in their hearts. What kind of existence did they provoke? The demonic beasts around them were all at the peak of the martial saint realm, and there were thousands of them. And this was without them knowing that Yi Hao had released another 10,000 demonic beasts. There were even more than 10 martial gods beside him. Which faction's young master was this to be able to have such a big lineup? And after the emperors died, the secret realm became a one-sided massacre. 8,000 ancient demonic beasts and 6,000 sky-devouring rats killed the 900 million soldiers, causing them to cover their heads and flee like rats. As long as the ancient demonic beasts and sky-devouring rats appeared, they would definitely be killed without leaving a single armor behind. Each attack of the ancient demonic beasts and sky-devouring rats could take away dozens of lives. Destroying a small team of 1,000 people was something that happened in the blink of an eye. Even if the He-Shan camp had 900 million soldiers, they would not be able to withstand such a battle. At this moment, on the Dynasty battle list, no one could clearly see the dragon power column behind the He-Shan camp and Yanlong's camp. This was because the speed of the decrease and increase of the dragon power, as well as the changes in the numbers, were completely indiscernible. What exactly is happening in this secret realm? Could it be that the He-Shan camp is playing with suicide? The crowd were all making guesses. They were completely unable to imagine what could have caused such a situation. Even in the history of the Myriad Kingdom continent, such a thing had never happened. No, it had happened not long ago, and it was also caused by the Fire Dragon Empire. Everyone was puzzled. What kind of divine being was this Fire Dragon Empire? Boom! Emperor Hashan's dynasty will be destroyed. Everyone suddenly heard a clap of thunder and immediately looked up, only to see a few blood-red words written on the imperial ranking board, shocking people to the core. Emperor Hashan was destroyed so quickly. At this moment, everyone was staring at the imperial dynasty rankings, unable to come back to their senses for a long time. Everyone looked at the dynasty ranking board and felt that it was a little unreal. Rumble, the Tao dynasty is destroyed. Honglong, the Pan dynasty is destroyed. Rumble, the Black Gold Empire is destroyed. The thunderclaps in the sky did not stop. While everyone was still in a daze, a total of 37 thunderclaps sounded. Everyone looked at the dynasty leaderboard and saw a series of information about the destruction of countries. At that moment, their feelings were indescribable. So many countries had been destroyed at once, and most importantly, it was done by a single faction. Even if it wasn't recorded in the annals of history, it was unlikely. This was simply a heaven-shaking miracle. Everyone thought about it. Previously, Emperor Hashan had provoked Yanlong's camp, and now his country had been destroyed. Previously, Hishan's camp's actions were like clowns. It was incomparably laughable. They weren't afraid of you at all. They just couldn't be bothered to fight with you. How about it? Now you know the pain. At this moment, everyone pointed their spears at Hishan's camp without holding back. If Emperor Hashan knew what everyone was thinking at this moment, he would probably die from anger. Rumble. Suddenly, an even louder clap of thunder pulled everyone back from their discussion. Everyone immediately looked at the dynasty leaderboard again. Then, their gazes were completely fixed on the dynasty leaderboard. Emperor Wen's dynasty is destroyed. What? Even the Emperor dynasty is destroyed? What exactly happened in the secret realm? Everyone looked at the dynasty leaderboard. There were only 2 Emperor dynasties left in Hishan's camp. Sure enough, as everyone expected, the 2 imperial empires soon showed signs of being destroyed. A country with 14 dragon power had destroyed a camp with 900 million people. At this moment, everyone still felt that it was too unreal. However, the dynasty leaderboard was definitely not fake. Regardless of whether they believed it or not, they had to believe it because the dynasty leaderboard was definitely not fake. This Fire Dragon Empire is indeed worthy of the word empire. It's definitely the biggest dark horse in this Myriad Kingdom banquet. Oh my god, this is simply too exciting. This battle will definitely be recorded in the annals of history for future generations to admire. This Myriad Kingdom banquet really wasn't a waste of time. I just want to know where this Fire Dragon Empire is. Why do I want to join so much? What a coincidence. Me too. Can you bring me along? I also want to join the Fire Dragon Empire. At this moment, Yi Hao was in the secret realm. He would never have thought that his actions at this moment would accidentally cause a wave of people to join the Fire Dragon Empire. Countless cultivators began to search for the Fire Dragon Empire's location, begging to join the Fire Dragon Empire. At this moment, everyone in the Fire Dragon Empire was even more excited. Long live His Majesty. His Majesty is simply too powerful. I wonder how His Majesty did it. I live and die as a member of the Fire Dragon Empire. I will die as a ghost of the Fire Dragon Empire. It's definitely our honor to have such a majesty. I can't take it anymore. I want to bear His Majesty's children. His Majesty is invincible. Let's see who dares to bully our Fire Dragon Empire in the future. Wasn't that Ishan camp very powerful previously? Didn't they still get wiped out by His Majesty? Let's see if they still dare to show off. Old son, I have a feeling that I'm dragging His Majesty down. Me too. At this moment, the Fire Emperor and Emperor's son were looking at the dynasty leaderboard and swallowed their saliva as they spoke. The two of them felt as if they had been on a roller coaster ride. However, they were completely numb now. Thinking back, they didn't believe in Yi Hao previously. Was slapped to their faces now. If I had known, I would have followed His Majesty. I want to see how His Majesty did it. At this moment, the two of them were filled with regret. They regretted not following Yi Hao to see this historical moment happen. All right, stop lamenting. Our next task is very important. Chun Ziqiao interrupted the two of them. Looking at their stunned faces, Chun Ziqiao said in annoyance, His Majesty wiped out so many countries in the mystic realm. Do you think these countries will let it go so easily? Hearing Chun Ziqiao's words, their expressions changed. They looked at each other and saw the helplessness in each other's eyes. Although these countries were wiped out, it was only the disappearance of their dragon power. And these countries in the real world hadn't been completely wiped out yet. Although the disappearance of their dragon power would cause these countries' morale to drop. But a starving camel is still bigger than a horse. Even a corner dog will jump over a wall. Chapter 535. Then what are we waiting for? Let's kill them before they react. The Fire Emperor pulled out his weapon. That's right. Let's kill them first and talk later. Emperor's son agreed. They finally understood why Yi Hao didn't bring them along. Instead, he had them stay near the Hishan camp. It turned out that Yi Hao had already predicted this from the start. Then let's compete and see who can reclaim more land. Chun Ziqiao laughed. At this moment, he was treating the Hishan camp's land as his own. There's no time to lose. Let's do it. Old Chun, if you lose, you have to treat us to wine. The Fire Emperor couldn't help but lick his lips. Oh, so you're still thinking about this bit of wine. This is the Lord's wine. I can't make the decision. Chun Ziqiao laughed. When the time comes, we'll reclaim these lands and ask for a reward from the Lord. Emperor's son immediately said, All right then, let's begin. The Fire Emperor finished speaking and took the lead to charge out. The army that was already prepared started moving. Originally, the Fire Empire only had 100 million soldiers. However, when they reclaimed Emperor Wu and the other empires, they expanded their army by 300 million soldiers. At this moment, the 400 million soldiers were like a sandstorm as they charged toward the imperial dynasty in the Hishan camp. Uncles, the enemy forces are too big. We have to split up. Since he had become Yi Hao's subject, the Fire Emperor no longer called Huaji and the others imperial uncles. All right, wait for me to regroup. We can't lose to Chun Ziqiao and Emperor's son. Huaji and the others immediately shouted in response. One had to know that time was tight and the mission was heavy. The Emperor dynasty in the Hishan camp, not including the 3 Emperor dynasties, probably had at least 4 billion soldiers. This was several times the number of soldiers of the Fire Dragon Empire. Luckily, they had listened to Yi Hao and gathered all their soldiers. The soldiers of the Hishan camp were too spread out and didn't have a chance to regroup. Hence, they could only take advantage of this opportunity to wipe out all these empires. When the army gathered together, there would be hundreds of millions of them. They would definitely be able to wipe out these dynasties with the momentum of sweeping away fallen leaves. The Fire Emperor, Huaji, and the others immediately split into 5 groups and attacked the 5 empires. As for the Fire Emperor, Huaji, and the other 4, they broke through 5 imperial empires at lightning speed and destroyed 5 imperial capitals. Even so, the 5 empires were still completely dumbfounded. They didn't even know that the imperial capital had been destroyed. The first thing that the Fire Emperor did was to kill all the members of the imperial family and the ministers. Those who deserved to be killed were killed, and those who deserved to be captured. The remaining small fries simply couldn't cause too much of a stir. Damn Fire Dragon Empire, die die. Emperor Hashan roared like a madman within Emperor Hashan's capital. The other emperors also had ugly expressions on their faces. At this moment, they had yet to recover from the blow of the destruction of their nation. They did not expect that their dynasty would be destroyed so quickly. This was the destruction of an empire. Thousands of years of foundation was destroyed in a day. They couldn't understand how it could happen in such a short time. Alliance leader Hishan, what should we do now? There were still some emperors who asked unwillingly. Everyone, please calm down. It's our fault. We didn't expect that kid to have so many experts by his side. Emperor Hashan immediately calmed his anger and said, it was as he said, he would never have thought that Yi Hao would have so many martial gods. If he had known that Yi Hao had so many martial gods at the start, he would never have gone against Yi Hao. But now, before they could even make a name for themselves, their country had already been destroyed. It would be difficult for him not to be ridiculed. Even so, he was still a little unwilling. He was unwilling to accept that his country was gone just like that. He was unwilling to accept that Yi Hao had stolen his limelight. Therefore, although he was filled with fear for Yi Hao, he was also filled with hatred for Yi Hao. At this thought, Emperor Hashan said, everyone, now that things have come to this, are you willing to just let this matter go? Of course not. Otherwise, why would we still be here? That's right. That damn Fire Dragon Empire destroyed everything I had. How can I just let it go like that? When I think of that brat and his arrogant appearance, I want to pull out his tendons and drink his blood. The emperors said angrily, everyone, since things have come to this, why don't we fight them to the death? Emperor Hashan was very satisfied when he saw the emperor's emotional fluctuations. Emperor Hashan, what should we do? The emperors immediately asked Emperor Hashan, what we need to do now is to gather all the soldiers we can and slaughter the Fire Dragon Empire. Kill as many as we can. Since things have come to this point, what's there to be afraid of? Emperor Hashan said viciously. The emperors were shocked when they heard Emperor Hashan's words. They didn't expect Emperor Hashan to really fight to the death. However, Emperor Hashan's idea was indeed in line with everyone's wishes. Emperor Hashan immediately said, at this moment, that brat must still be proud of killing us. Let's kill his people and teach him a lesson. Let's see if he's arrogant or not. Emperor Hashan glanced at everyone. What do you all think? The emperors looked at each other and agreed. Let's do as the Alliance Master says. Kill everyone from the Fire Dragon Empire. That's right. We can't do anything to him in the secret realm. I don't believe that we can't do anything to him in the real world. Alliance Master Hashan will do as you say. We're the closest to the Fire Dragon Empire. Let's teach them a lesson first. Hearing the emperor's words, Emperor Hashan was immediately satisfied. Good. You all will be the vanguard. We'll follow closely behind. Just as the emperors were deep in discussion, a few people suddenly took out their sound transmission talismans. The emperor's expressions changed. They had a bad premonition. This was because they took out emergency sound transmission talismans. If there wasn't anything serious, they definitely wouldn't use these sound transmission talismans. Crack! Suddenly, one of the emperors became dispirited after reading the sound transmission talisman. He directly crushed the sound transmission talisman in his hand. The other emperors weren't in a much better state. The emperors looked over in confusion. Emperor Hashan frowned and asked, what happened? The emperor who crushed the sound transmission talisman slowly raised his head and looked at Emperor Hashan. Then, he looked at the emperors. Seeing the confusion on the emperors' faces, he still answered, my people sent news. Just now, a powerful army rushed into the imperial capital of our dynasty. All the troops were killed. After saying this, his body became like a deflated balloon. He started to become dispirited. Chapter 536. What was going on? The emperors couldn't believe that the Fire Dragon Empire could be so fast. They thought that the plan they had discussed was fast enough. If nothing went wrong, they would be able to deal a fatal blow to the Fire Dragon Empire. However, they had just finished discussing and something went wrong. How were they supposed to live? Emperor Hashan frowned. His face was so gloomy that it was almost dripping water. He looked at the other emperors and asked in a low voice, "What's going on with you guys?" The other emperors also looked gloomy and said, "Same for us. The imperial capital has been destroyed. Now the country is completely destroyed." "Who did it?" Emperor Hashan continued to ask. The emperors could clearly hear Emperor Hashan's voice as he gritted his teeth. "The Fire Dragon Empire," the emperors said in unison. Emperor Hashan's body suddenly trembled. Puffed. Suddenly, Emperor Hashan spat out a mouthful of blood. The emperors immediately went up to support him out of concern. Why? Why did it turn out like this? Do the heavens really want me to die? Emperor Hashan held his chest unwillingly and roared into the sky. When the emperors saw Emperor Hashan's appearance, although they didn't want to admit it, they could only lower their heads because they weren't any better. "Quick, have all your troops retreat. We can't let them kill anymore. Otherwise, we'll really have nothing left." Emperor Hashan suddenly raised his head and said to the emperors anxiously. Hearing Emperor Hashan's words, the emperors immediately took out their respective voice transmission talismans and ordered their men to retreat. "Keep as many as you can. It's up to fate." Emperor Hashan sighed and thought to himself as he watched the emperor's actions. "Quickly retreat with me. This place isn't safe anymore. Reporting to your majesty, several of our cities have been attacked by an unknown army." As soon as Emperor Hashan finished speaking, a guard came in to report. The emperors looked at each other and saw the shock in each other's eyes. They didn't expect the Fire Dragon Empire to be so fast. The emperors were actually feeling bitter in their hearts. That was because they were all wondering what sort of existence they had provoked. Putting aside the fact that he had annihilated them in the secret realm, in the real world, he had even pursued them relentlessly, turning them into stray dogs. "Retreat," Emperor Hashan said through gritted teeth. The emperors then flew out of the palace. Emperor Hashan looked at his palace reluctantly. "Alliance Master Hashan, leave quickly." The emperors advised anxiously because they had already discovered that many cities were already burning with the flames of war. They couldn't help but be shocked by the speed of the Fire Dragon Empire's march, which could only be described as terrifying. In the secret realm, Yihao recalled all the ancient mutated beasts and sky-devouring rats, leaving only Guiyifan. "Let's go," Yihao immediately said to Guiyifan. "Yes," Guiyifan replied and immediately flew into the void with Yihao. "My origin fragment. I'm coming," Yihao thought excitedly. Although the name origin fragment didn't sound good, it was still a part of the origin fragment. It was the origin power of the Myriad Lands continent. The two of them flew in front of the origin fragment again, and Yihao reached out to take it. Ding dong. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the origin fragment. You have gained 300 million experience points. Please continue to work hard. What surprised Yihao was that, even though he had obtained an incomplete origin fragment, he could still obtain experience points. Uproar. Suddenly, Yihao felt the world shake. This! Yihao looked down and realized that the space below was rapidly collapsing and being destroyed. Could it be that this mystic realm was transformed from the essence fragments? Yihao guessed in his heart. In reality, Yihao didn't know that an origin fragment could support an area of an entire level. The origin fragment in Yihao's hand was the energy source that supported all the secret realms at the dynasty level. All the secret realms of the dynasty seemed to be separated and formed independent areas, but they were all connected. It was just that they couldn't sense each other. Therefore, Yihao's action at this moment was undoubtedly taking away the energy source of all the secret realms of the dynasty. Without the support of energy, these secret realms naturally couldn't support themselves. Not only the secret realm under Yihao's feet, but all the secret realms of the dynasty were rapidly collapsing at this moment. "Oh my God, what's going on? Why is the secret realm collapsing?" After all the forces of the dynasty were sent out of the secret realm, they were all still in shock. Everyone immediately cared about their own dragon power and looked towards the dynasty. In the end, everyone was dumbfounded because the imperial dynasty ranking had actually disappeared. Everyone immediately rubbed their eyes and looked at the sky again. They realized that it was indeed so. The other levels of the country board were still intact. Only the dynasty board wasn't in the sky, as if it had never appeared. This matter immediately spread throughout the entire continent. After all, the Myriad Country Board was the most straightforward place to understand the forces of the Myriad Country continent. At this moment, the disappearance of the Dynasty Board for no reason was definitely a big deal. The disappearance of the Dynasty Board was like a bolt of lightning that caused the entire continent to boil. All the forces were frantically investigating the reason for the disappearance of the Dynasty Board. What's this door for? At this moment, Yihao knew nothing about the outside world. He looked at the golden door beside him and was very curious. Should I go in or not? Yihao looked at the golden door in front of him. Behind the golden door was full of unknowns. Therefore, at this moment, he was very conflicted, because behind the golden door might be full of danger, but it might also be full of opportunities. After all, he also didn't know what was behind the golden door. No matter how he looked at it, this golden door was a teleportation door. Yihao didn't know where this golden door would teleport him, and it was very likely that it would teleport him to a dangerous place. Ding dong, congratulations to the host for obtaining the mission. Do you accept it? Just as Yihao was conflicted, the system's notification suddenly sounded. Yeah, there's actually a mission? Yihao couldn't help but be curious about the mission that the system suddenly issued. He was curious about what mission the system would issue at this time. Mission requirement. Host enters the golden door. Mission reward. Origin fragment. After checking the mission, Yihao was delighted. He looked at the golden door excitedly and guessed, could it be that behind the golden door is another secret realm with origin fragment? Come in. Yihao made up his mind. Even if it was for the origin fragment, the dangers behind the golden door were worth it for him to enter. Looking at the golden door in front of him, Yihao was still a little nervous, but he was also filled with curiosity. This was human nature. They would be filled with curiosity and fear towards the unknown. Chapter 537. Kill them. Kill these bastards. After Yihao stepped through the golden door, he heard shouts in his head. Where are the shouts? Yihao became cautious and looked around. Where is this? Yihao realized that he was in the midst of a small team of 100 people. This small team of 100 people was chasing after a small team of 10 people. That small team of 10 people was desperately trying to escape, while the small team of 100 people was trying their best to catch up. Yihao didn't understand where he was. Brat, who are you? Why are you here? Suddenly, a loud shout sounded in Yihao's ears. Yihao snapped back to his senses and realized that he was surrounded by a small team of 100 people. One of them, who looked like a leader, was glaring at him. That small team leader looked at Yihao arrogantly. When he saw that Yihao didn't speak, he wanted to slap him. Kid, I'm asking you a question. Do you want to die? Leader, I don't think this kid is anything good. Let's just kill him. I think this kid is a spy from the enemy camp. We should interrogate him properly. The rest of the team looked at Yihao and started discussing. You're asking for death. Yihao looked at the small team leader's cultivation and realized that he was only at the marshal general level. How could he let him off so easily? He slapped him with the back of his hand. Slap. Whoosh. Yihao slapped the small team leader's face. The small team leader flew out and spun 360 degrees in the air. Bam! The small team leader fell to the ground. He couldn't be more dead. Ding dong. Congratulations to the host for increasing his dragon power by 1. At the same time, the system notification sounded. I knew it. When he heard the system notification, Yihao knew that his guess was right. This was also a mystic realm. However, the level of this mystic realm didn't seem too high. Let me ask you, which force do you belong to? Yihao looked at the small team of 100 people who were in a daze and asked them. At this moment, The small team of 100 people only recovered from their shock when they heard Yihao's question. "Oh my God, Run!" Suddenly, someone shouted. Everyone immediately scattered like birds and beasts, fleeing in all directions. Each and every one of them was only a beginner warrior, which meant that they had just become warriors. In their hearts, the small leader was already their guardian angel. He was already considered very powerful. But now he had been slapped to death by Yihao. They had never seen such a scene before. At this moment, they wished they had 8 legs so that they could run faster. Sigh. Yihao sighed helplessly as he looked at the fleeing crowd. He was also unwilling to kill these people who did not even have the strength to truss up a chicken. After all, he did not have much enmity with them. However, these people were all dragon power. How could Yihao let them off so easily? Besides, they wouldn't really die if they killed these people in the secret realm, so Yihao didn't feel too guilty. In the blink of an eye, Yihao killed everyone except for one person. What are you trying to do? The guard who was caught by Yihao was so scared that he almost peed his pants. He asked in a panic and almost shouted, "Tell me, what force are you from?" Yihao continued to ask. He wanted to know which dynasty this secret realm belonged to. "I am from the Peng dynasty," the guard answered nervously. "Then you can die." After Yihao finished speaking, he easily killed the guard. "Go, kill everyone." Yihao immediately released dozens of magical beasts. According to the dragon power of the dynasty, there should be more than 1,000 dragon power. Although, compared to his current 900 million dragon power, it seemed pitiful. However, in Yihao's opinion, even a mosquito's leg was meat. He couldn't waste it. Moreover, there was more than one dynasty here. There were at least 20 of them. 20 dynasties added together, there would be at least 20,000 dragon power. Just as Yihao killed the previous 100 guards, the 10,000 Kingdoms continent was in an uproar again. Everyone was still puzzled by the disappearance of the dynasty list. Suddenly, 9 claps of thunder sounded in the sky. Everyone knew that the thunder of the 10,000 Kingdoms ceremony wouldn't sound casually. The more it sounded, the more important it was. In history, it only sounded 4 times at most. But this time it sounded 9 times in a row. Everyone knew that something big was going to happen. "Look, what is that?" Suddenly, someone pointed to the sky. A blood-red giant list appeared in the sky. This blood-red giant list appeared in the middle of all the dynasty lists. It was even bigger than all the dynasty lists. The light of the giant red list instantly covered all the dynasty lists and reached the ground that everyone was looking at. Everyone was curious. What was this list that had never appeared before? Did it have anything to do with the disappearance of the dynasty list? Words appeared on it. Suddenly, someone saw it again. This time, no one cared because everyone's eyes were fixed on the giant red list and the golden words that gradually appeared on the list. Random entry. Everyone saw the 3 red words on the red list and didn't understand what it meant. Could it be that such a big commotion was given such an ordinary name? Just as everyone was curious about the meaning of this random entry into the leaderboard, a voice suddenly rang out. Suddenly, someone noticed the matter on the dynasty list. Look at the dynasty list. There's a country's dragon power that is decreasing substantially. Just as everyone looked over, the random entry list suddenly shook with red light. 4 words appeared on the random entry list again. Fire Dragon Empire. What's going on? Why is it the Fire Dragon Empire? Why is the Fire Dragon Empire's name on the random entry list? What does the Fire Dragon Empire and the random entry list mean? I'm confused. Is there any record of this in history? Can you explain to us what it means to randomly enter the rankings? At this moment, everyone in the Myriad Kingdom continent was confused by this random entry into the leaderboard, because this had never appeared in the 10,000 Kingdoms continent before. Otherwise, if there were records in history, they wouldn't have to make such a fuss. Look at the Fire Dragon Empire's dragon power. It's actually increasing. Suddenly, someone exclaimed in disbelief. Everyone was shocked and looked at the Fire Dragon Empire's dragon power in disbelief. Behind the Fire Dragon Empire, there was a series of numbers. The numbers behind were increasing. 100, exactly 100. Suddenly, someone shouted loudly, which immediately aroused everyone's curiosity. Well, 100. Look at the Peng dynasty. Its dragon power decreased by 100, but the Fire Dragon Empire's dragon power increased by 100. That person quickly said, "How is this possible?" Everyone's jaws dropped when they heard this. Chapter 538. Is this what it means to enter the list randomly? But how did he do it? Everyone finally understood what it meant to enter the list randomly. But then, they became even more confused and curious. Because in the Myriad Kingdom continent, such a thing has never happened before. No matter how one looked at it, this matter was so inconceivable, but it really happened. Everyone's feelings toward the Fire Dragon Empire could no longer be described with words. This was because the impact that the Flame Dragon Empire had brought upon them was simply too great. In the first round, they defeated Emperor Wu and the others. In the second round, they were even more heaven-defying. They used 14 dragon power points to fight against 900 million dragon power points and won miraculously. Before they could even catch their breath, Yi Hao actually made it into the list randomly. Everyone was suspecting whether the disappearance of the dynasty rankings was related to Yi Hao at this moment. Looks like this kingdom camp that was randomly entered is going to be unlucky, someone said regretfully. This was because Yi Hao did not even put 900 million dragon points in his eyes, and he had eaten all of it. This was only 20,000 or so dragon points, not to mention Yi Hao. Sure enough, in an instant, the two camps on the kingdom list were destroyed at the same time. Boom! Suddenly, there was a clap of thunder. Everyone looked over and realized that the kingdom list had disappeared just like the dynasty list. What's going on? Everyone's eyes widened. Looks like the disappearance of the dynasty list is related to the Fire Dragon Empire. Needless to say, it's definitely done by the Fire Dragon Empire. I'm just curious. How'd he do it? Everyone looked at the kingdom list that disappeared, their hearts filled with curiosity and doubt. However, Wang Guobang's disappearance caused everyone to point their fingers at the Flame Dragon Empire. Because of the disappearance of the kingdom list, everyone guessed that the disappearance of the dynasty list must be related to Yi Hao. Go and find out where this Fire Dragon Empire is. At this moment, in the Four Demons Alliance, the Four Demons gods held an emergency meeting. Alliance Master, this Fire Dragon Empire definitely has an incredible secret. We must dig it out. The Western Demon God said immediately, "Of course, but the other forces won't be idle either. We must act quickly." The Eastern Demon God stroked his white beard and said. After saying that, the Eastern Demon God closed his eyes and pondered. Then his eyes lit up. "Send me 10 death gods, emissaries. We must capture the Fire Dragon Empire's emperor." When everyone heard the Eastern Demon God's words, they were all shocked. Many people even fear when they heard the death emissaries. That was because in their eyes, the emissaries of the death god were not humans at all, but killing machines. All the emissaries of the death god had to undergo devilish training from the moment they were born. It could be said that there were countless casualties, and those who survived were all elites. All the emissaries of the death god had completely lost their ability to think. In their minds, there was only obedience and slaughter. The average strength of an envoy of the death god was around the 7th order martial god realm. The cultivation of many people present couldn't even compare to the death god's emissaries. The death god's emissaries didn't fear death and didn't feel pain. Unless they were killed, even 8th or 9th level martial gods might not be their opponents. The death god's emissaries were the Four Demons Alliance's ultimate trump card. Normally, they wouldn't take action. Once they took action, there was no mission they couldn't complete. Moreover, all of them were difficult missions. But this time, the Eastern Demon God actually sent out 10 death gods emissaries. It was obvious how important the Fire Dragon Empire was to him. Actually, the Eastern Demon God couldn't be blamed for this. He already saw a trace of danger from the Fire Dragon Empire. The Fire Dragon Empire's growth was too heaven-defying. Previously, it was only 14 dragon power points. Now, it had broken through to 900 million dragon power points. With another 100 million dragon power points, it could be promoted to a holy dynasty. Moreover, the disappearance of the dynasty ranking, as well as the appearance of random entrants, made him have to take it seriously. In the current Myriad Kingdom continent, the Four Demons Alliance was one of the strongest holy dynasties, excluding the godly nation. Therefore, he definitely couldn't let Yi Hao, this unstable factor, grow recklessly. This was also the unspoken rule of the Myriad Kingdom continent. Many old factions didn't want to see new factions grow. Therefore, they would definitely take measures. The new factions would either be destroyed, submit, or soar. Basically, the chances of submitting were the highest. But as long as they submitted, they would basically be exploited by the old factions. They would be completely turned into dogs without any power to resist. Therefore, many factions would rather die than submit. They were directly destroyed by the old factions. There's only a very, very small chance that they could soar to the top and destroy the old factions. The Four Demons Alliance was such an old faction. There were at least 8,000 factions that were destroyed by the Four Demons Alliance. There were also countless geniuses that were destroyed by the Four Demons Alliance. The remaining geniuses all became members of the Four Demons Alliance and worked hard for the Four Demons Alliance. There had never been anyone who could break free from the Four Demons Alliance's restraints. Otherwise, the Four Demons Alliance wouldn't exist. The most powerful one was the Devouring Demon God. The Devouring Demon God controlled countless powerhouses and almost destroyed the Four Demons Alliance. In the end, the Four Demons Alliance had to request for reinforcements to kill the Devouring Demon God. Therefore, from then on, the Four Demons Alliance became even more domineering. They only had one goal, either submit or be destroyed. And Yi Hao was targeted by the Four Demons Alliance. Things were not looking good for him. In everyone's opinion, no matter how jubilant Yi Hao was, there would only be two inevitable outcomes. He would either be destroyed or become a tool of the Four Demons Alliance. Alliance Master, this matter is different. It will probably cause a commotion. The Southern Demon God said worriedly. The Eastern Demon God also looked worried. The thing that the Southern Demon God was worried about was also what he was worried about, because the four god nations wouldn't easily make a move. But it was different this time. With such a big change, it would be difficult for the four god nations to not make a move. The disappearance of the dynasty rankings would definitely affect the future structure of the Myriad Kingdom continent. It was absolutely intolerable for the four god nations to be in control. But then the Eastern Demon God thought of something. His brows relaxed, and a cunning smile appeared on his face. Don't worry. I'm afraid the four god nations won't be free to deal with this matter for the time being. When everyone heard the Eastern Demon God's words, their hearts trembled, because there was definitely a story behind the Eastern Demon God's words. But the matter of the four god nations wasn't something that people of their level could worry about. And from the looks of it, the Eastern Demon God didn't seem to want to talk about it. No matter how curious they were, no one dared to ask first. While they were talking, the 10 Death God's messengers had already appeared in the main hall. Kacha! The sound of heavy metal rubbing against each other pierced everyone's eardrums. Everyone immediately looked up. The 10 Death God's messengers were already standing in the main hall, wearing heavy armor. The Death God's messengers' heavy armor covered their entire bodies. Behind them were blood-red cloaks. Chapter 539. The messengers of the Death God all wore metal masks on their faces. Even their eyes were completely covered, so it was impossible to see their true appearances. Every emissary of the Death God was full of mystery to everyone present. Only the Alliance Master could see the true appearances of these messengers of the Death God. The messengers of the Death God were filled with a murderous and bloody aura, which made many people present feel uncomfortable. Greetings, Alliance Master. The 10 messengers of the Death God's hoarse voices were like machines rubbing against each other. It made people shudder when they heard it. You all know my orders, right? The East Sha God looked at the 10 messengers of the Death God and asked in a dignified tone. At the same time, he looked at these messengers of the Death God with a smug look in his eyes. This was because these messengers of the death god were personally trained by him. Yes, the 10 messengers of the death god spoke simply, as if they were unwilling to say another word. Then go. If you fail the mission, you don't have to come back. Yes, the 10 messengers of the death god clearly did not expect the East Sha god to give a death order. The East Sha god meant that if they failed to capture Yi Hao, they would have to die to atone for their sins. However, they were already used to such missions. In their dictionary, there were only 2 possibilities. Either they completed the mission or they died. The 10 messengers of the death god immediately turned and left. Their movements were not sloppy as they charged towards the Fire Dragon Empire. Ding dong, congratulations to the host for obtaining origin energy fragments. Congratulations to the host for obtaining 100 million experience points. Yi Hao kept the origin energy fragments in the duchy region into the space. Instantly, the entire duchy's secret realm collapsed. Yi Hao was already used to such scenes. Yi Hao looked at the void beneath his feet and stepped into the golden door beside him. Seeing the world in front of him, Yi Hao immediately released the ancient mutated beasts. Kill! Instantly, thousands of ancient mutated beasts charged out. Looks like this should be the duchy region's secret realm. Yi Hao guessed as he sensed the martial power in the air. Now, he no longer needed to capture people to be able to determine the level of the secret realm he was in. Sure enough, a system notification rang out in his mind a moment later. Looks like it's still a little short. Looking at his dragon power, it was obvious that this secret realm could not allow his dragon power to break through to 1 billion points. I'm almost there. After a while, the notification in his mind stopped, and Yi Hao immediately rushed into the void. 4th origin energy fragments. Yi Hao looked at the origin energy fragments in front of him. This was already the 4th origin energy fragment. After collecting the origin source fragment, Yi Hao immediately entered the golden door. Spirit Nation Region's 5th fragment. Kingdom Region's Kingdom, S Region, Emperor's Kingdoms here. Yi Hao's God, 2 of the God, to realm God realm, 2 of the earth gods of the world of gods territory. He God of the world's gods of the world gods to him, S's of the gods. God of the God of God, of the God gods of the God of the God of the God of you of the. Yi Hao heard the notification in his mind and immediately retracted his foot from the God of God's kingdom. He said to the system, merge. Yi Hao looked into the infinite space ring and saw the dukedom's origin energy fragments, the Marquisate's origin energy fragments, the kingdom's origin energy fragments, and the Spirit Nation's origin energy fragments instantly merged together. After a long time, the system notification sounded again. Ding dong, congratulations to the host for obtaining 1 origin energy fragment. Ding dong, congratulations to the host for obtaining 3 origin energy fragments. The host is rewarded with a special gift pack. There's a special gift pack. Use it. Yi Hao immediately used the special gift pack. Ding dong, congratulations to the host for obtaining the Peak Martial God Composite Potion. Peak Martial God Composite Potion can be used on martial gods to break through to the Peak Martial God realm. Duration of use, half an hour. Good, not bad. Yi Hao was satisfied with this reward. After all, it was free. Yi Hao looked at the infinite space ring. There were already 3 origin energy fragments and 2 origin energy fragments. Obviously, the 2 origin energy fragments were not enough to merge together. Yi Hao retracted his gaze and immediately entered the secret territory of the Empire. I wonder how strong the Emperor forces in this secret territory are. To Yi Hao's surprise, the place where he appeared was empty. However, when Yi Hao felt the martial Dao energy in the air, he knew that the forces in this secret territory should not be too weak. One had to know that there were many Emperor forces that had martial saints and even low-level martial gods. However, Yi Hao was still not afraid. He immediately summoned all of the ancient strange beasts. The ancient strange beasts immediately rushed out. What Yi Hao did not know was that this secret territory was the secret territory of the Azure Cloud Camp and the Icefield Camp. Among these 2 camps, The Azure Cloud Empire and the Ice Field Empire were the two top empires in the Myriad Kingdom continent. These two empires had always been in a hostile state. Moreover, these two camps were the empires that had the most hope of becoming Saint forces. What Yihao did not expect was that these two empires would come to a decision at this time and fight against each other in this competition. Not counting the forces in the same camp, just the Azure Cloud Empire and the Ice Field Empire's Dragon Force had reached over 900 million Dragon Force points. As for the other camp's Dragon Force points, it had reached over 400,000 Dragon Force points. The two camps' Dragon Force points added up to more than 800,000 Dragon Force points. If Yihao knew about the secret territory he was in, he would definitely not be so careless as to release all of his ancient strange beasts. One had to know that the Azure Cloud Empire and the Ice Field Empire were two of the top Emperor forces. Naturally, they would not be so simple. Ice Field Emperor, it's time for us to fight to the death. At this time, on an ice field, a total of 4 billion elite soldiers were lined up neatly. The bearded and wild-looking Emperor Songyun was currently sitting on a 100-meter-long cloud eagle. The Azure Cloud Emperor was clad in red metal armor and held a huge red blade in his hand as he shouted arrogantly. If there was an expert present, they would be able to see that the Azure Cloud Emperor's cultivation had already reached second order martial god realm. Even the cloud eagle he was sitting on had the strength of a first order martial god. Roar! 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 The moment the Azure Cloud Emperor's voice fell, the 4 billion soldiers raised the ice blades in their hands and slapped their armor. They roared loudly and majestically. The roar of the 4 billion soldiers pierced through the clouds. It was enough to shake one's soul and make one's blood boil. Azure Cloud Alliance Master, in my opinion, why don't we attack directly and exterminate this group of bastards? One of the Azure Cloud Emperor camp's emperors immediately spoke. Chapter 540. Even without seeing his face, everyone could feel a powerful wave of chi surging toward them just by hearing his voice. The emperor who had just spoken was even more flustered. Large beads of sweat instantly covered his head. The reason for that was because he could sense that the aura of death was coming for him. Ice Origin Emperor is still so overbearing. Emperor Songyun was the leader of the Yun Tsang camp. He would not allow his ally to be bullied. That would be a slap to his face. Emperor Songyun released a strong energy before he finished his words. In the blink of an eye, the two forces collided, and it was a draw. Phew! The emperor who spoke earlier heaved a sigh of relief when he was saved. Because he was locked down by the Origin Emperor's aura, he could not even move, let alone resist. Yun Tsang Emperor, you are still so arrogant. The Ice Plain Emperor wasn't angry that his attack was blocked by the Azure Cloud Emperor. Instead, he spoke with a mocking tone. What is the meaning of this? Emperor Songyun frowned and asked in a thunderous voice. Sigh, I was praising you when I said that your intelligence was low. Ha ha! The Ice Origin Emperor sighed as he mocked with a smile on his face, causing the crowd to burst out in laughter. You dare to humiliate me? You're courting death. Emperor Songyun roared furiously after being humiliated by the Ice Origin Emperor. He was a hot-tempered person. How could he tolerate Emperor Songyun's provocation? Armies, listen up. Emperor Songyun raised his blade. Ha! Hearing Emperor Songyun's words, the 4 billion soldiers pulled out their weapons and roared. Kill them. Emperor Songyun pointed his blade at the Ice Origin Empire. Ignorant fool, you entered my encirclement without realizing it. Emperor Songyun did not show any fear or nervousness when he saw Emperor Songyun's actions. Instead, he laughed. Alliance leader, you are so smart. Many emperors from the Ice Origin Empire praised. Emperor Songyun had already set up a trap around the Yun Tsang camp. He was just waiting for the Yun Tsang camp to enter. Emperor Songyun's eyes were filled with anticipation and joy. As long as the Yun Tsang camp entered his trap, he would win. He might even be able to get rid of Yun Tsang. However, at this moment, the cloud eagle that Emperor Songyun was sitting on suddenly let out a long cry. Halt and retreat. Hearing the long cry of the cloud eagle he was riding, Yinsong's heart instantly trembled, because he knew that the cloud eagle usually wouldn't carelessly cry out, unless something big was going to happen. Right now, there were only two factions in the arcane realm, so he guessed that the cloud eagle must have discovered something from the Icefield Empire, which was why it was calling out. Could it be that they found out? That can't be. Seeing that Song Yun's camp had stopped attacking and was retreating, the smile on the Icefield Emperor's face disappeared. The Ice Plain dynasty carefully examined the entire process. They believed that they had done every step perfectly and did not make any mistakes. But why would Song Yun's camp suddenly retreat? The Ice Origin King's gaze immediately swept towards the emperors behind him. Looking at the cold eyes of the Ice Origin King and the murderous aura on his body, the emperor shuddered. Alliance Master, you can't be suspecting us, right? We would never betray the Icefield faction. The emperors knew what the Ice Origin King was thinking and hurriedly explained. Cloud Eagle, what's going on? Emperor Song Yun looked at the Icefield faction suspiciously and asked the Cloud Eagle. There are many powerful auras coming towards us. We can't fight now, so we should be vigilant. The Cloud Eagle said. Hearing the Cloud Eagle's words, Yun Song clenched the giant blade in his hand and looked towards the Icefield faction. Could it be that the Icefield Emperor invited experts? Emperor Song Yun guessed, because it wasn't impossible. Thinking of this, Yun Song didn't dare to be careless and immediately ordered in a low voice, "Raise the alert of the three armies." Seeing the serious expression on Yun Song's face, the emperors didn't dare to be careless and looked around vigilantly. Alliance Master, let's fight. If we don't fight, this great opportunity will be gone. Seeing that the Song Yun's army was gradually retreating, the emperors of the Icefield faction couldn't help but speak anxiously. Bing Yuan was also hesitant because he didn't know what was going on and why Yin Song would suddenly retreat, so he didn't dare to be careless. He was also afraid that there was a trap. No rush, let's wait and see. Bing Yuan waved his hand. That Song Yun's army had 4 billion soldiers. How could they retreat in such a short period of time? Bing Yuan narrowed his eyes as he looked at the Song Yun's army. The emperors and generals beside him had anxious expressions. After waiting for a long time, the Icefield Emperor didn't see any other movements from the Song Yun's army and finally gave the order, all armies, attack. He also didn't want to see the fat meat that was already in his mouth lose just like that. After all, who cared if Yin Song had a trap or not? He would only know after trying. Yes, the emperors of the Icefield faction were delighted, but before they could give the order, roar! Suddenly, the roar of a beast came from afar. The roar of the beast was filled with energy. Before anyone could see where it came from, they could feel their eardrums ringing. Wait, what's that sound? Hearing the roar, the Icefield Emperor immediately stopped the emperors from giving the order and asked anxiously. It sounds like the roar of a demonic beast. Someone said uncertainly, roar, roar, roar. Suddenly, the roar of the beast came again, and it was continuous. The emperors identified the direction of the roar and were startled. Alliance Master, the roar seems to be coming from behind us, and it seems like there are quite a few of them. They hurriedly said in a panic. Damn Yin Song, he actually deliberately attracted my attention and attacked from behind. The Icefield Emperor was enraged. He naturally thought that the ancient demonic beasts behind him were created by Emperor Yin Song, because from what he saw, there were only 2 factions in the secret realm. He didn't create any demonic beasts, so it must be Emperor Yin Song who did it. It was a pity that he still didn't know what was happening outside the secret realm. Otherwise, he would know that the Fire Dragon Empire was here. He wouldn't have jumped to the conclusion that these ancient demonic beasts were created by Emperor Yin Song. Alliance Master, what should we do now? The emperors immediately looked at the Icefield Emperor anxiously. I didn't expect that we would be schemed against by others. The Icefield Emperor coldly snorted. Since things have come to this, let's fight to the death. Pass down my order. Gather the 3 armies and destroy Yun Song's faction. Don't worry about the rear for now. The Ice Field Emperor immediately ordered. From what he saw, the army in front of him was the backbone of Yun Song's faction. As long as they destroyed Yun Song's faction, the demonic beasts behind them would naturally be destroyed. The main thing was that he didn't know how many ancient demonic beasts were behind them. Otherwise, he wouldn't have given such an order so naturally. Chapter 541. Alliance Leader. The roar of the beasts seems to be coming from the back of the Ice Plains camp. The emperors of Yun Song's camp all had strange expressions on their faces. They all looked at Yun Song suspiciously, guessing whether or not this was Yun Song's trump card. Yun Song's face was also filled with confusion because he knew that these beasts had nothing to do with him. He originally thought that these beasts were used by the Ice Plains King to deal with him. But from the looks of it, the situation didn't seem right. He couldn't figure out what was going on, and he also suspected that this was the Ice Plains King's scheme. But no matter what kind of scheme it was, there was no way he would use a group of beasts to attack his own people, unless the Ice Plains King's brain was damaged. If the Ice Plains King knew what Yun Song was thinking, he would probably bleed from anger. Kill. Suddenly, an earth-shattering roar came from all around, interrupting Yun Song's thoughts. Alliance Leader, this is bad. We seem to be surrounded. The Emperor's faces changed as they hurriedly said, "What are you panicking for?" Yun Song angrily rebuked. "Tell our subordinates not to panic. Continue to retreat." Although Yun Song looked simple and crude, it didn't mean that he was stupid. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to sit in his current position. And no matter how he looked at it, he felt that today's matter was a little strange, so he didn't want to continue attacking. "Follow me and break out." Yun Song collected his thoughts and immediately retreated with the emperors. "Kill!" Yun Song roared as the cloud eagle he was sitting on flapped its wings, creating two tornadoes that sent hundreds of people from the Ice Plains camp flying. Yun Song himself was even more ferocious as he charged into the crowd like a ferocious tiger. The giant blade in his hand was constantly changing, and every time it was swung, it would take away countless lives. In his eyes, these elite soldiers of the Ice Plains camp were like weeds that he could slaughter at will. This wasn't because the Ice Plains camp wasn't strong enough, but because Yun Song's battle strength was just too strong. And the more Yun Song fought, the fewer Ice Plains soldiers around him. No one dared to fight with him, because if they did, they would just be sending themselves to their deaths. "Yun Song, what's the point of bullying these soldiers? Fight me if you have the ability." When he saw Yun Song slaughtering unscrupulously in his own troops, he was almost torn apart in his encirclement by Yun Song. The Ice Origin King naturally could not allow him to continue like this. He immediately rushed towards Yun Song. "Let's fight then. Do you think that this emperor is afraid of you?" The gigantic blade in Yun Song's hands reaped the lives of countless people as he stared at the Ice Origin Emperor with a bloodthirsty gaze. "Come, little brat Bing Yuan. Let this emperor see if you've grown." Yun Song roared. Waves of energy rolled out from his body as he charged at the Bing Yuan King with his giant blade. Yun Song's movements were swift and decisive, and he did not bother to hide his martial power at all. It was as if he wanted to kill the Ice Origin King in one fell swoop. Although the two nations had always been in a hostile state, this was the first time that the two emperors had actually used their swords and spears. Seeing Yun Song's ferocious attacks, the Ice Origin King did not show any weakness. Wielding his three-pointed, double-edged spear, he directly met the attacks head-on. Boom! When the two of them collided, a shockwave spread out in all directions. Mountains and rivers immediately shattered. Countless soldiers who were unable to dodge in time were directly smashed into meat paste. The two emperors both retreated several steps. It was actually impossible to determine who was stronger. The two emperors got into position and began fighting again in the blink of an eye. As for the soldiers of the two camps, they were both shocked and filled with worship as they watched the two emperors fight. However, without exception, they all stayed as far away as they could even if they had a fight. They were afraid that the two emperors would accidentally injure them again. At this time, The two camps were in a deadlock. Neither side could do anything to the other. Yin Song and Bing Yuan were even more so. The two of them were evenly matched, and it was impossible to determine a victor in a short time. It's so lively. Yi Hao suddenly appeared in the air above the two camps. When Yi Hao saw this army of close to 8 billion soldiers, he was also filled with envy. After all, this was all dragon energy. Who are you? Upon hearing Yi Hao's voice, the two emperors stopped fighting at the same time, even though they were still fighting. They were on guard against the other party while looking at Yi Hao. My surname is Wu. My name is Fu Qing, Yi Hao said with a smile. Father Wu. The two emperors frowned and muttered at the same time. Lad, you are courting death. How dare you humiliate me? Go to hell. The two emperors immediately reacted. They shouted angrily and attacked Yi Hao at the same time. No matter what, they were martial gods and emperors of empires. How could they tolerate being humiliated by a lad? Therefore, the two emperors only had one goal, which was to capture this reckless lad and tear him into pieces. Why aren't you protecting me? Yi Hao shouted calmly when he saw the two emperors charging at him aggressively. Suddenly, a row of figures appeared in front of them. The two emperors immediately stopped and looked at the figures. After a glance, a thought appeared in their minds. Run. It's too late to run now. Yi Hao's mocking voice rang in their ears. The two emperors' expressions changed instantly. They were surrounded by 4 or 5 martial gods. Yin Song, are they your men? Emperor Bing Yuan asked Emperor Yin Song through telepathy. Look at my situation. How could they be my men? Yin Song asked with a bitter expression. Who are you? The two emperors asked at the same time. Didn't I tell you? My name is Wu Fu Qing, Yi Hao said with a smile. The two emperors' faces turned pale. Obviously, they would not fall for Yi Hao's trick and let Yi Hao take advantage of them again. All right, do you choose to have fun? Or do you choose to have unpleasant fun? What do you mean by pleasant fun? The two emperors immediately asked when they heard Yi Hao's question. Pleasant fun means that you will kill yourselves and save me the trouble of killing you. The two emperors' faces turned gloomy when they heard Yi Hao's words. The two emperors gritted their teeth and stared at Yi Hao. They continued to ask, what about unpleasant fun? Then I will have to trouble my men to do it personally. However, I guarantee that it will be more painful than suicide. Yi Hao continued to speak with a smile, as if he did not see the two emperors' eyes. Do you think that you can do whatever you want just because you have more than 10 martial emperors? Emperor Bing Yuan looked at Yi Hao with a sneer. You want me to kill myself? You must be dreaming. Emperor Yin Song said with disdain. Although Yi Hao has more than 10 martial gods, they're all initial stage martial gods. On the other hand, they have nearly 8 billion soldiers. Therefore, they are not completely afraid of Yi Hao. They are confident that their soldiers will be able to kill Yi Hao and Yi Hao's men. Who said that I only have more than 10 martial gods? Yi Hao looked at the two emperors with a smile. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.